No, I couldn't get a hold of Handle. Good evening. I'd like to call the Thursday, October 6th of 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting for administration to order with roll call. Carl Johnson is absent. I'm Sherry Gieske. Dave Wiltsey. Ray Larson.
Here.
Brent Mueller.
Present.
Ryan Curry.
Here.
Tom Wahlberg.
Here.
Alicia Patterson. Here. Bill Robertson. Sherry Bartelt. Here. Rodney Riley.
Here.
And Freddie DeLiver Trinidad. To start out with, thank you. We do have a quorum. I'd like to start out by asking for an approval of the minutes from September 1st, Committee of the Whole Administration meeting, and September 8th, Committee of the Whole Finance meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Ryan, seconded by Tom Wahlberg. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. I'm looking for approval of the agenda. Do we need to make any changes, Dan?
Not tonight.
No? Okay. Needed a motion to approve. Motion made by Rodney Riley, seconded by Sherry Bartelt. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
We didn't receive any. There might be some in the audience. Not sure. We haven't received any slips though tonight.
Okay. So nothing in the audience? All right.
You want to ask just in case?
For some reason I can't look. Are there any people in the audience that would like to speak during public comment? Going once. All right, let's move on. Thank you. All right, monthly presentations. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Curry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, ma'am. I am going to move on to 6 monthly presentations. The sheriff is not in, but I believe he got an attachment, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
I should read. 6.2, the highway engineer. Justin, are you on the line on Zoom?
Justin is going to be giving his report next week's meeting.
Okay, Justin will be giving the report next week. That makes it quick. Quarterly department presentations. Dan, you want to start?
So up here. All right, good evening, County Board. It has been a busy month in the administration office. My written report is up here on board docs. I did want to highlight just a few items really quickly tonight. So first and foremost, the county administrator recruitment is underway. The process is being led by the hiring committee, which is made up of the county board chair, the vice chair, and then also the chair of the administrative committee. And then with support from the administration office, that is at least the initial phase is wrapping up, and the applications are due by tomorrow, October 7th. And so just wanted to give that quick update, and I'm sure there'll be more to come on that item here in the future. Wanted to, we've been giving updates on the public transportation program here in the county and our reimbursements for that service. And so the county, we'd gotten behind for state fiscal year 2022. Happy to report that we did finalize our grant reporting for state fiscal year 2022 in August. As of right now, we've received just over 157,000 of that reimbursement for the year. We're awaiting just 7,000 additional from the state. Just as a reminder to the county board, so 91% of that reimbursed amount is actually passed on from the county over to the Boone County Council on Aging. They are the provider for that rural on-demand service. And then we're continuing to await word on a couple of grant applications that we have out there for public transportation. We applied for a $3 million capital grant for a new dedicated facility for public transit, and then also a $150,000 procurement grant for 2 new buses for the program. A couple other items I just wanted to touch on. So we do our annual wellness screening for employees called the health risk screening event. The first event is actually going to be tomorrow morning. And just a reminder for all employees and also even county board members, you're all eligible to go and get this done. It's totally free to you. So it's free for employees and their spouses. Again, that event is going to be tomorrow morning at the PSB. And there are also dates coming up next Friday on the 14th and then also on October 27th. And then finally, I wanted to talk about our natural gas renewal bids. And so this is something that I'm going to bring back at the October 20th county board meeting. Just a quick overview. The county, we utilize a brokerage to go out on our behalf and competitively bid our natural gas accounts through NICOR. And so what this does is we can lock in really competitive pricing for up to 3 years. And it's resulted in some significant savings over time for the county. The 4 accounts are up for renewal in January of 2023. The bad news is with the increase in natural gas pricing, we're going to have some substantial increases. So just to give you an idea, so right now, our current rate that we locked into in 2019 was for 29, just about 30 cents a therm. Right now, the bidding that we got today, we can get this updated every day. The bidding that we got today is up to 62 cents bid today. And so it's going to be a budget increase for the county. The good news is the NICOR rate is actually $1.24 a therm. So we're still, if we're at 62, we're still saving considerably compared to what we would be paying if we were on the NICOR gas rate. And so again, this is something pricing changes every day. We're going to go back out to bid on the day of the board meeting. And then that night I'll bring those final pricing bids to the board that night, and we'll lock in that price on the 20th. So just wanted to give a heads up on that. As far as anything else on the report, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions in the boardroom? Rodney?
Just out of curiosity, I know it's very early in the process. How's the applications going for the administrator position? I'm not looking for a number, but good response?
Yeah, sure.
I can just give you, I had a little update for later on, but I'll give it to you right now.
Thank you, sure.
Hang on, if you let me get to my notes, so I make sure I tell you what it's actually saying. As Dan mentioned, the posting closes tomorrow. But as of today, we've received 20 applicants. And we have interviewed one. What we've done is we've gone through all the applicants at the end of each week. Michelle has been managing that process for us. And we are scheduled now for 2 more interviews next week. Ryan's going to be out of town the rest of the week. So what we'll do after tomorrow is we'll take a look and see what other applicants we've got, and if there's anybody that we'll interview then. And you're back in the following week, right?
Correct.
So we'll finish up those interviews the week after that. So let's see. I think that's it.
All right, thank you.
All right, Dan?
Yeah, perfect.
And it's been pretty positive so far.
Yeah, I'm in this day and age where nobody wants to work, we've gotten quite a lot of quite a few applicants, and I've been pleasantly surprised.
Yep. Agreed. Any other questions for Dan? Anything else? That's it. Good to go. We'll move on. Drew is not here. Hopefully he'll report next week. Tammy from GIS, are you? You are. The floor is yours.
Like I say, I usually don't have anything other to add to this. So if you guys have looked at it, have any questions,
Rather,
they have anything else to add. So
sure. Do anybody have any questions for Tammy? She has submitted the monthly report, so if you have any questions afterwards, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them through email or whatnot. So, all right, thank you. Izzy, your turn.
Okay. All right, so planning is working on a variety of applications. As you see, even from our agenda tonight, we've been busy I have been busy for the last couple of months. Text amendments use. If you recall, the previous quarter, we finished up our work with lot of record, and then this last quarter, I was able to meet with the Boone County Agricultural Conservation Farmland Protection Committee, and they just reviewed some of the text amendments that lot of record had passed on to them. And so with their approval in the next few months, you'll be able to see some of those text amendments come through. Other tasks that I've been working on are creating an ordinance for addressing that's been coming up again and again with a little bit of some issues. So it might be that as well as part of an amendment that we make or an addition that we make to the zoning ordinance. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Izzy. Any questions for Izzy? All right, thank you, Izzy. Going to move on to section 8, written monthly departmental reports. And does anybody have anything? Tricia, I know I'd ask you to report on something at this time. Are you on the phone?
I am here
Awesome.
via Zoom. Not sure if Izzy's back.
Yes,
Okay.
you are.
Okay.
Hi.
Thanks. I just wanted to give everyone an update. I did send an email to the board advising them that myself and the sheriff have filed a suit against the Safety Act. We join approximately 50 other state's attorneys that have filed up through today. And the press release talks about the reasons why we've done this. And basically, and I've talked about it before with the board, you know, we're just really trying to balance everyone's constitutional rights, those of individuals that are charged but not yet convicted, probable cause of crimes committed, safety to the public. I guess the two criticisms that I've seen have been, why have you waited so long since the law passed in January of 2021? Well, since that time, the State's Attorneys Association and the Sheriff's Associations have been working with different legislators across the state, trying to come up with a legislative solution. And it really has not come to fruition at this point. And we are getting down to the last legislative session before this law takes effect. And so that's why the litigation has been filed now. And also about that it's really trying to reinstate cash bond. And I don't think that that's necessarily the issue. A lot of the state's attorneys really like the New Jersey model, which is also no cash bond. So it's not about money. That the New Jersey model, they changed their constitution to allow the no cash bond system. And they also give a lot of discretion to the judge, which is what we are seeking amongst other things in these suits. So right now it's just the early stages. There's talk about consolidating these lawsuits, and I'm not sure what county they may be heard in. It's very likely they will be consolidated, and it'll move kind of fast here. So I'll have more information in the weeks to come. And I don't know if anyone had any questions after reading the press release or any other questions based on what we've talked about before.
Anybody have any questions for the state's attorney?
Hi,
Sherry, go ahead.
Trish, this is Sherry, I'm just a little slow. A suit was filed against the law. I'm not quite certain I understand. Is that, are we suing the governor, or I'm not quite
Right.
certain. I don't understand that.
Yes, we are have filed suit against the governor and the Senate president and the head of the legislative body. And so that's who the suit's proceeding against. And the attorney general does represent those entities.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Riley?
Yeah, that's why I was very adamant on the doing the proclamation last month on the Safety Act. And yes, those are exactly the people we're suing, Sherry, because they're the people that signed this into law. So they're the ones responsible for this.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions for state's attorney? Thank you very much, Tricia.
All right, thank you. And I will be on the entire meeting if there's other legal issues that come up throughout the meeting. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving on to new business. Need a motion to approve claims with the understanding that Carl Johnson abstains from voting on all claims presented by William Charles from the Illinois Service Company, and all claims presented from Core and Maine, and all claims submitted by the Boone County Highway Department. Phil Robertson abstains from voting on all claims presented by B. Robertson Lock Service.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Brent Mueller. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Sherry Giesky, yes. Ray Larson,
Aye.
Brent Mueller,
Aye.
Brian Curry,
Yes.
Tom Wahlberg,
Aye.
Alicia Patterson,
Aye.
Sherry Bartels,
Yes.
Rodney Riley,
Yes.
Freddie De La Trinidad.
Yes.
Motion carries.
9.2, this is Health Department ARPA and Core Program Renewal Funding Gap Update. And Amanda, would you like to come up and just kind of give us a brief update on all the great things happening in the Board of Health? Why do you laugh like that's not somebody good?
Always fun at the health department. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Amanda Mail. I'm the Public Health Administrator at the Boone County Health Department. And I'm just here to give a quick update on two items that are listed on board docs. The first item that I wanted to update the county board on is just directing your attention back to the memo that was dated July 14th of 2022. And that was the core program renewal funding gap memo that you all had made a motion and approved. And that amount was for $112,241. And the idea behind that was that our very first Department of Justice grant that we received in 2019 was coming to a close. We had rewritten for renewal funding, but for the last 2 fiscal years, the Department of Justice has been slow in reviewing and approving those applications. So we were concerned that there was going to be a gap in services and some staffing issues if we didn't have that sort of gap funding approved. So you all had approved that amount. And I guess there is that old saying that when you bring an umbrella, it doesn't rain, right? So I very much appreciated the fact that on behalf of the task force, we were able to work with the county board to have that gap funding put in place just in case. Turns out we are not going to need it because number one, the Department of Justice was on time this year in reviewing and approving applications. And number two, we did receive our 4th grant through DOJ. So this is the renewal of the original core grant from 2019. I really like saying this amount. I've been saying it all day because we did have a press conference at 1 o'clock, $778,305. So that's our 4th grant in a row. We've applied 4 years in a row and been awarded in a progression, significantly more money each time, which is exciting. So I do have notice of press release, which I'll pass around. We did hold a press release at a press conference in this room at 1. It did air at 5 and 6 o'clock. And as long as your meeting doesn't go too long tonight, it'll air again at 10. If you want to watch it at 10 o'clock, 17, 13, and 23 were here. And 39 did an after press conference Zoom with Jessica Perillo, who's our program manager. So I just wanted to give you all the good news that we won't be needing to seek any gap funding. We'll be able to proceed as planned with the full amount that we asked for. Largest grant we've received so far, and the 4th of 4 consecutive grants over 4 years. I'll pass this one.
Just take questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Any questions? Go ahead, Sherry.
Amanda, can you just talk a little bit about what additional things we can do with that $778,000 in addition to our continuing, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So that is the grant that funds the core program manager's position and also the core program navigator. Those were the 2 original staff that we hired for the behavioral health program. We now have a team of 7 who are funded by several of these other grants. It will allow us to hire 1 more staffer to do some strategic planning for data collection and analysis. We're building a forward-facing dashboard that's going to allow us to push out local data so that we can track not only how we're progressing with the program deliverables, but also track the real impact that we're trying to make. So we want to make an impact individual by individual, but we also want to make population health impact, which is, are we reducing recidivism, meaning the number of times that somebody or a group of people return to the Boone County Jail for the same reasons, in this case being substance use or misuse or severe mental health diagnosis that is makes them a danger to themselves or others, right? And so if we are tracking things like recidivism, lowering the number of repeat overdoses when somebody leaves jail and then begins using again and uses too much too quickly and then has a subsequent overdose. So looking at those numbers and being able to more publicly show what an impact these federal dollars are making locally. So we're pretty excited about that. It also continues all of the operations that were stood up 3 years ago in the Boone County Jail. So one of the nice things about these grants is these aren't health department grants. The health department handles a lot of the fiscal and behind the scene operations, but a lot of the money goes to the other county departments that participate in the behavioral health task force. So our Boone County Jail receives money for the medicated assisted recovery treatment program that we run. The Sheriff's Department, overall, our local law enforcement with our community law enforcement officer who is hired by the Belvedere Police Department is a recipient of the grant funding so she can conduct her full-time work. So those are some of the activities that we'll continue to provide over the next 3 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think it's pretty amazing. So we appreciate you, and it's a huge feat and a big deal. So thank you.
Pretty exciting.
You're doing a great job. Yeah, it's appreciated.
Looking forward to being able to be more clear in the coming years on, again, that impact that we're making at a population level, reducing rates of things that are not good and increasing access to services, access to food, clothing, housing, shelter, stable employment, parenting classes, all the things that individuals who have a behavioral health diagnosis need some additional support with sometimes. And if we could make that measurable impact and then show that, it just shows the bang for the buck and the positive societal impact. So
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Sherry.
The one thing I do want to add is there's like 30 partners. There's all sorts of other entities and agencies that are part of this. It isn't, Amanda mentioned a few, but there's all sorts of other partners in this. It's really a very impressive.
I'd say over half of the county departments participate in it because the entire justice system is a part of the behavioral health task force. So probation, sheriff, jail, our court system, our public defender, just to name a few. GIS and planning have been involved from time to time if we're mapping overdoses or looking at, things that are happening across the county in certain zip codes or certain census tracts. We have faith-based partners, social service partners. All of our healthcare partners are at the table. Our two mental health and behavioral health facilities in town, which are Rosecrans and Remedies, sit at that table. They're actually sub-award recipients of 2 of the grants that we have to pay for some community mental health clinicians that go out with our law enforcement officer to provide on the street support, knocking on doors, going to see people after an overdose, driving people to treatment centers. Sometimes there are no beds available locally. We don't have an inpatient mental health facility or substance abuse facility here in Boone County, so we sometimes have to transport people 2-3 hours away to another facility to get the support that they need. Then they can come back and reintegrate themselves into the community.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I just wanted to make sure people understood it doesn't take a village, it takes the entire community. And I think I'll be forwarding you a resume also for the open job you've got.
Sherry Bartelt.
Would like to thank Amanda and her staff. I was in there the other week to get my booster shot. It ran like a charm and out in less than 20 minutes, well, about half hour, because we had to sit and wait for 15 minutes. But everything went really smooth, and I hope everybody else turns around and gets their booster shot this year. Thank you.
All right. Did you want to represent Arpa as well? Sure.
I can. So that was back in July when we did the core gap request, and we won't be needing that, so that's excellent. I did want to go over the original approval for the Arpa funding that we had brought forward to the county board around this time last year. And that amount, I believe you've got it up on the screen, the amount that had been approved for spend down was the up to amount of $836,627 and 67 cents. And that was categorized in several buckets with the intention to continue COVID-19 mitigation. So we had brought forward a proposal and talked about the different areas in which we were going to continue to stand up operations. And there were 2 specific things that I had promised this board last year. One was if we did receive additional state or federal grants, that we would utilize those as the point of first charging, so we would charge those grants down before utilizing any local county dollars that had been afforded through federal funds. And then the second thing that I promised was, as the COVID-19 situation fluctuated, which it has fluctuated a lot over the last 2.5 years, we would downsize our staff accordingly as needed. So both of those things we've been able to do. So you can see from the documentation up on the board that as of the end of August of 2022, we had only spent down 51% of the amount that had originally been allocated. So we are underspending, and in looking at the projections for what we will need for, well, September is over, but once we calculate those numbers and then October through December, we anticipate that we will continue to be underspending. So we are moving into calendar year 2023, with a much more slimmed down staffing pattern and a smaller amount of supplies that we will need. The operations that we will continue to offer are COVID-19 tests and COVID-19 vaccinations. This month in particular, we're pretty busy. Sherry had mentioned the booster shots. We do have some large clinics that we're running up at the Poplar Grove Fire Station, District 3 Fire Station. And we do anticipate that there will be several more waves of whether it's booster shots, additional shots for children or infants, additional testing and mitigation duties. My hope is that it will never look like it looked a year or two ago. And I think with the amount of vaccine that's been distributed, the amount of immunity, both natural and vaccine acquired, that is now circulating in the general population, just as well as the knowledge that has been gained through this very challenging time, that we won't ever go back to what we experienced in 2020 and 2021. There will continue to be COVID-19 operations that our department will be engaged in. And so our plan, just to give you all an update, is to continue to very carefully spend down these monies as needed into the calendar year 2023. Same two promises on the table from me as the department head of the health department to you all, which is as we continue to get continued COVID-19 funding from the state and federal government, we will move any smaller staff groups or supply groups that have been charged to Arpa previously under those grants. And then as we find that the workload continues to wane, which is my hope, then we will downsize accordingly, whether it's through layoffs or it's through attrition if we have a staff member who resigns and then we choose not to fill that position. So at this time, what we're calculating our up to amount to be for year 2 of Arpa, which is calendar year 2023, is $292,364.80. And it's just like last year, what was an up to amount. I do anticipate that we will probably underspend in calendar year 2023, but I want to give you an accurate picture of what we think that up to amount might be. And with the remainder for year 1 and what's still remaining, what I need for year 2 fits within what was originally approved. So I'm pretty happy to report that out because I don't need to ask for any additional funding at this time to continue the COVID-19 mitigation activities that our department is engaged in. Ryan, I don't know if you have anything to add, or Sherry, as members of our Board of Health. I just want to make sure I'm being really clear about kind of how we operated, what we had originally asked for, where we're at now, what we're anticipating will be our up to amount needs for 2023, and what our spend down plan is with continuing what was originally allocated.
Sure. Sherry, did you have anything?
No.
We see a lot of times different departments ask for money and then are asking for more and more and more, or they make these promises that if we don't spend this, it'll come back. And a lot of times government that doesn't come back. So you have, and I appreciate this, have managed a budget to the point where you're going to be able to use the money left over from last year to facilitate this year's spending and hopefully even under that. So I applaud you for managing that budget very well. And the people, I know it's not easy to hire them, lay off and hire them lay off. It's probably not the funnest part of your job, but it's appreciated because the county is always in tough times. And I think budget management's obviously something that taxpayers deserve just as much as anybody else. So that being said, does anybody have any questions? Tom?
Yeah, just one thing. So great report, man. I really appreciate the detail. I know we had approved, just can you give a little more detail on the mobile unit and sign where that's at?
Get a guess.
It's like a thanks pant emoji. That's all. So yes, I do have an update. So the update on the mobile unit is that we have an ad hoc committee that's part of our COVID-19 incident command team, which is internal to our department, that has been searching nationwide for a gently used vehicle. And there have been none on the lots due to the pandemic, and B, the supply chain issues to get a new one made have backed up all of the companies that build these units. They're backed up 9 to 18 months at this point. So we are in touch with several companies that have serviced state and local health departments, providing the size mobile unit that we want that fits within the budget that we had originally asked for. And we've spoken with county admin about what the bidding process going out for bid will need to look like, because per the county purchasing policy, this will be obviously well above the cutoff limit for needing to go out to bid. So we've communicated with the companies, and once we can see equipment being available again, then we will go out for that bidding process. I anticipate that we would like to have it now. We would have liked to have had it 6 months ago, because we had plans for deploying that unit out to be able to do COVID-19 mitigation, but we will still be able to do some of those things when we do finally get this unit. And the other nice thing about the unit is activities other than COVID-19 can occur for the long haul once the unit is in place. So we will use it for its intended purpose. And then as those duties hopefully continue to wane, additional mobile services can occur. I do want to share something positive too about when you all approved that, and when we knew that we were working on getting a van, it actually helped us get another smaller chronic disease grant, because we told a different funder that due to COVID-19 activities, we were getting a mobile unit. And then once COVID-19 slowed down, we wanted to be able to do some chronic disease screenings on the bus, and our county was partnering with us. And it actually was a positive sell for them. And they awarded us some money to then, in the long term, transition that unit from COVID-19 operations to more sustainable chronic disease operations. I always get really excited when that happens, because I'm like, yay, that's a really positive way to bring something into the community that comes for a negative reason. We're responding to a pandemic, but then it can outlive the pandemic and actually provide positive long-term support for residents.
Any other questions? Oh, the sign as well.
The sign.
Yeah.
Real quick on the car.
Sure.
Have you included looking for used thing? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
It's been,
Yeah.
it's the face plant.
Cousin Eddie RV, you can't just customize one of those.
Right. No, we need like a clinical table. We need room for a refrigerator. There's all kinds of things that we need.
Fancy, right?
Yeah. And then the monument sign situation has been kind of a longer process too. We're lucky to have an ad hoc committee that we created for that. It's myself and 2 other staff members in my office. And then it's Dan and Izzy from planning and county admin. And we've been working most recently, and I don't want to speak for planning or admin, but we've been working most recently with the city to determine sort of setbacks and obviously all the restrictions for where that sign can be placed. We have the bid process sort of figured out like how we would need to go out for bid with the companies that we have quotes from. And we have a few that we like, that it's my understanding that we hope to bring forward to you all to kind of show you design choices and give you a couple of options and get your feedback. The current project on the table is working with the city to figure out where we can place it and what the setback restrictions are and whether or not we would need a special use. Izzy, stop me if I'm explaining variance. A variance. I don't speak planning so well. So yes, if we would need a variance and what that would look like. So it's taking a little while, but I do think I like the choices that are available, and if we can get it located where I think we'd ideally like it, I think it will really bring kind of a more professional presence to the entryway to the street, sort of as people are driving down Logan Avenue. So
Awesome. Anybody have questions? Any questions regarding CORE or ARPA? Thank you, Amanda.
okay, thank you.
Coming and reporting.
Of course, thank you.
We are moving on to 9.3. I need a motion to approve resolution 22-71 adopting the R1PC Regional Solid Waste Management Plan pursuant to the Illinois Solid Waste Planning and Recycling Act 415 ILCS 15. Motion made by Rodney Riley, seconded by Sherry Bartell. Present. We have
So tonight, we have on the agenda the adoption of the Region 1 Planning Council's Regional Solid Waste Management Plan. This was a plan that the board approved back on June 17th of 2021 to engage with R1PC to complete the plan on behalf of the county. This is required by Illinois state law. We have to do this every 5 years. We have to update a solid waste plan. When we got into the weeds in early 2021, we realized that the county hadn't had a plan update since 2006, and so we were well overdue for one. And it just so happened that at the same time, Winnebago County was also going through that the same process, and so R1PC stepped in and did a regional plan with both Boone and Winnebago. And so Sydney Turner is from R1PC. She's the director of regional planning, and she's going to give a quick presentation about the plan.
Thank you for letting me speak today. So as was mentioned, this is a requirement of the Illinois. It falls under the jurisdiction of the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. And so this is really looking out to 20 years and what, from a regional standpoint, we need to do. So in addition to being a state requirement, this is something that we really need to focus in on a region because the two landfills within our region have short life expectancies, shorter than the 20-year horizon of this plan. So to start being able to address some of these issues before they become an issue is really important. So one of the life expectancies is only 6 remaining years and the other is 16, just to show that. So there is a set of requirements for each of the plans that is developed from the IEPA through that act that was passed. So our plan meets all of those requirements and we made sure to address them at a minimum and also go beyond in some of those categories as well. So the kind of two purposes of the overall document is to provide a high-level regional scale goals that Boone and Winnebago County can achieve in the 20 years horizon, as well as develop some short-term goals to kind of incrementally support waste reduction efforts. So there were 3 diversion goals that were developed as a part of this based off of feedback from the advisory committee. And I don't believe they're included in the PowerPoint. But the first is to achieve a 95% reduction of material diversion rate, achieve an 85% non-traditional materials diversion rate, and achieve an 85 organics diversion rate. And so what a diversion rate is it's how much waste can be diverted from a landfill. And so those are the kind of 3 goals that are outlined in the plan. And then what's addressed in the implementation portion of this plan is how we can get there and what we can do as a region to achieve those. So a key component of this was the development of a solid waste advisory committee that kind of led the process of this and really gave some valuable feedback. And so this was a mixture of both public and private sector members. So the landfills and waste management companies were a part of that. Members of municipalities as well as the counties were also involved. And then there was citizen participation on that advisory committee as well. So overall, approximately a year to be able to complete this project from start to finish. So back in May of 2021, we held a project kickoff. And then following shortly after that, we held the first committee meeting in August. The committee met 4 times, and during that same exact process, we had several public engagement events. So this was done first through a survey that was sent out and advertised through both counties. And then we also held a public meeting on September 23rd of 2021 over Zoom. And that was to be able to answer any questions that citizens or members of the public had regarding waste and also provide any feedback that they had. Following that, staff took the feedback received during the public comments and the survey as well as from the committee to draft a plan. That plan led primarily by the steering committee, was completed early spring of this year, and it went out for a 30-day public comment period. During that comment period, we did hold a public hearing. Again, that was virtual, not in person. Once that feedback was taken into the planning document, we submitted the draft to the IEPA for their review and approval to make sure that we met all of the requirements needed of that. And then late this summer, we received confirmation that the plan met all the requirements and could be moved forward. So now that is why we are here to present that document to you and to pass it through the county boards. Just briefly, I won't go into a lot of detail, but also provided in that presentation is just an overview of the data collection that we undertook as part of the process. So this is a data-informed process, and we were able to do that in collaboration with the University of Illinois, Chicago, to help us create models and scenarios of what possible diversions could look like based off of different rates and speeds of those. So they were very helpful in this process in providing some of that expertise needed to develop it. And then just finally, just showing some of the advertisements that we held for public engagement as well.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Sherry?
This is a bit off topic, but for years we used to talk about, I'm going to use my road. I live out in the country, and on my road, there are 3 garbage trucks that go by all the time. And I think it's a well-known fact that these heavy garbage trucks raise hell with the roads. Now, it's not included in here, but the point I'm going to make is I think it's something we talked about many times, and then it went nowhere. It was even before your time, I think. Looking at this, number one. But number two, there's no recycling where I'm at. When we had our house redone, I had my 2 recycling bins, and it's not utilized. So the point I'm getting at is if we can also, as a county, stop and think about perhaps thinking through this again and make some sense out of all these garbage trucks running up and down the roads. Number one, and number two, also then encourage this recycling. I was looking at your data from Boone County. I lived in the suburbs of Chicago. We were recycling years ago. So anyhow, I guess that's not a question. I guess that's a comment. But I'm hoping we can think about that going forward.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Back to my train of thought. 9.4, need a motion to move Ogdenville and Kish 2 solar special use permit renewal forward to the county board for approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Freddie De La Trinidad. Discussion, presentation.
Yes, me.
Busy?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to give a quick introduction. Dan, if you could pull up mine first, please. Thank you. So if you recall, this may sound familiar. We did discuss it at the last committee of the whole administration meeting, but I wanted to give another introduction. So this is a special use permit extension request. So these are approved special use permits that have gone through the review by various boards and commissions, as well as public hearings. They have gone through the comprehensive plan, as well as the findings of fact. Cypress Creek is requesting these renewals as they are permitted to do so. And yes, they have had extension requests approved in the past. However, they're one of the few solar developers that actually have a successful project that's running right now. And it's actually part of one of the ones that they are requesting extension for tonight. So, and that's that would be Kish 2, which is one of the projects they're requesting an extension on, the special use extension. So this is located in Flora Township, northeast of Cherry Valley Road, west of Wheeler Road. It is currently zoned A1 Agricultural Preservation District. And if you saw in their updated report, they are doing everything they can in order to have continued farming in whatever capacity is possible. So Kish 1 is located right here, like I said, one of the projects that's up and running, and then Kish 2 would be located right here. The second special use permit you'll hear about is Ogdenville. This is located in Bonus Township, north of US Route 20, west of Garden Prairie Road. I know we discussed this briefly last time, but this actually is zoned I1, which is a light industrial district. And so I wanted to just clarify that for the board in case you're not familiar. So because it is already zoned industrial, any type of industrial uses, some are permitted by right. And so you wouldn't see any permit come through requesting, for example, an assembly hall to go there, self-service storage, even a truck stop. So they can actually go there right now, tomorrow, no permit necessary. So this is again also a mixed use, mixed zoning district area, commercial, industrial, multifamily, recreational. So I wanted to give that introduction. Staff is recommending in favor of these extensions, and I will pass it now over to Paul Irby and his team.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Yeah, thank you, Izzy, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Paul Irby. I'm the lead developer for Kish 2 and Ogdenville Solar at Cypress Creek Renewables. I'm joined tonight by a couple of folks who are going to be helping me with the presentation. We've got Drew, who is a licensed electrical engineer with Kinley Horn. We also have Ginny Plamo, who is our senior environmental manager at Cypress Creek, managing our entire Midwest region of solar projects, and also Ben Jacoby, who is our outside counsel with Pulsinelli.
Can you please try to speak in there just so that we can pick it up on the recording of it? Yeah. I appreciate it.
Is that a little bit better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Great. So as Izzy outlined, we're here requesting 1-year extension to the special use permits that are active for these projects currently. We presented on this at the last committee of the whole meeting. There were some comments, questions from the committee, and ultimately the recommendation at that time was not to approve these extensions. What I want to really convey to the committee tonight is just how important these projects are to us. How high of a priority they are for us within our portfolio of projects across the state, and hopefully address some of those concerns that came up during the last meeting. We've done some additional research. We had a month to do it. We have some experts here who can help speak to some of the issues that were brought up. And the goal tonight is to hopefully get support from the committee for these extensions. And really the kind of need for them stems from the fact that these projects are on the precipice of construction. We are essentially ready to go and build these projects as soon as we can in spring of next year. Unfortunately, our current special use permit expires in February. And as it's outlined in our approval, the project needs to be operational before the expiration of the special use permit. I'm going to go over a little bit of the work that we've done so far to put ourselves in a position to build these projects as soon as possible. But what I want to talk about right now is sort of the delays that we've seen. This has been discussed a couple of times now with the committee and the board. The primary delay here that we were seeing was due to the lack of offtake in the state's adjustable block program. Community solar projects can't move forward, can't operate unless they get this offtake, and it's extremely competitive. These projects did not secure offtake in the initial procurement, which occurred in 2019, and were on hold essentially for 2 years while the IPA put together new rulemaking to admit new projects into the program. They just rolled that out sort of towards the end of last year, December of last year. And we received a set allocation of projects that we could get in the new program. We chose Kish 2 and Ogdenville out of our entire portfolio of projects, among a couple of others, to receive this allocation. And that was a binding decision that we made very, very valuable allocation. And so these projects are extremely important to our company, and we've invested over $1.4 million in these projects to date. We are partnering with Nexamp Solar on these, and I'll get into that a little bit later on what that partnership is going to look like. But they're going to be taking on equity ownership of these projects, which is a really exciting step forward. And you may be asking, why are we here now requesting this extension 5 months ahead of our expiration? And the reason for that is that we are at a crossroads. So these projects all the pre-construction work is essentially completed. We're ready to go. We're ready to, apply for building permits, to secure a contract with an EPC. But that involves a lot of spending. The $3.5 million that we're investing in each of these projects, a big chunk of that is going to be the construction costs. And so we're at a point now where we're ready to make that investment. Nexamp is ready to make that investment. However, we have our current permit expiring in September, or not in September, in February of next year. And so really what we need is assurance from this committee and from the board that we will have an active special use permit through the entire construction phase next year. At this point, we have a very high level of certainty that these projects are going to be built and brought online next year, which is extremely exciting. After 5 years of working on these projects, we're so ready to get them built, and we're almost there. So I think Izzy did a great job in just providing an overview of these two. So I won't belabor the point too much here. But these are our site plans if you want to take another look at them. This is for Kish 2. Both of them are about 20 acres in size. Both of them are 2 megawatts AC capacity. They'll never go above 2 megawatts AC in capacity. That's a binding number with ComEd and the IPA direct contract. Any questions on the site plan before I kind of move? Great. I think one thing to note on Ogdenville, this is the parcel that's zoned industrial, is that the solar array only takes up about a quarter of the site. So it's about 80 acres of total usable area within this site that will continue to be usable after the project is built. The landowner, I think, is planning to farm the remainder of that of the property after completion of the project, but it is also still open to future industrial use if necessary. And so what we wanted to touch on here just really quickly and kind of take a step backwards on why we think this is going to be beneficial for Boone County. So the community solar program, basically how it works is if you subscribe to a project, you're kind of getting a share of that project. So you're a few of the panels within the project area that are equivalent to whatever your electricity load is. Those are yours essentially. And so you get to share in the energy production from the system. What we're targeting on these two systems are a 15% savings in your total electricity bill for all subscribers. And as I'm sure you can imagine, 15% on your annual amount of money that you pay towards your electricity bill, it can really add up. It's significant, especially with electricity prices rising. In terms of tax revenue for the county, we're anticipating that the addition of the solar facilities on these parcels will result in a 10 times increase in the property tax revenues for each parcel. And that's crucial funding for vital community services. And these really require no services themselves. So it's really just a net gain for the county in terms of the balance sheet. In terms of jobs, typically around 20 jobs per project during construction. Primary source of employment for these projects is going to be during that construction phase, that 3 to 4 month construction phase. But there are operations and maintenance personnel as well that will be going out to the project sites on a quarterly basis to do any repair work, mow the grass, and take care of any other needs. In terms of infrastructure investment and economic development, these projects represent a significant investment from my company and NextAmp Solar in Boone County. $3.5 million in anticipated spending per project, 900,000 of which is going and has already been paid to ComEd to upgrade the electrical grid to support interconnection of these projects. And then there's around $20,000 in local annual spending per project during operation. And really kind of the overarching benefit here really is local carbon-free electricity generation for approximately 300 to 400 homes and businesses. These projects deliver electricity directly to the distribution grid. So the electrons produced by the panels are going straight to the end users.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So on your report here, in conclusion, it says stray voltage is a concern that may affect livestock behavior and dairy production. While most stray voltage concerns are due to on-farm electrical and wiring issues on the utilities distribution circuit causing high neutral to earth voltage, NEV, may contribute to stray voltage on local farms. However, in addition of local PV generation on the distribution circuit has no impact on neutral to earth stray voltage seen by these farms. So you're recommending in your letter here that your system will not put any more voltage into the distribution of the electrical grid.
So we're going to cover stray voltage a little bit later. So can I save that question for later? We have an expert here who's going to talk through that as well for sure. I know it's an issue that you want to address. So.
And one more thing. If you guys are ready for construction or have been ready, how comes you have not started construction?
Yeah, it's a good question. So at this point, we still have a couple of months before we're actually going to be ready to break ground. We need to secure a construction contractor. The contracting process takes about a month or two. We still need building permits from the county. We're anticipating all of that work is going to be completed here by the end of the year. And I mean, as you can imagine, doing any type of construction work in Illinois in the winter is incredibly difficult. And so what we don't want to have happen is that we start construction now, we get, almost all the way through and then big snowstorm hits and we have to close up shop and then start again in the spring. That would be very, very costly and probably ruinous for the project. So, the conservative approach here and the one that is really the only realistic approach is to start as soon as we can in the spring. And that's our plan. We've got everything in place to do that.
Well, last month you had the ownership transferred to NextAmp in September.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's October.
Yeah, and so that's part of the request here as well. So NextAmp, in order to take on this project, they need to know that the project is going to have an active special use permit through the construction phase.
But can NextAmp come and do their own permit?
Their own special use permit for the projects? In theory they could, but that would only set back the project timelines. And, we want to get these things built as soon as possible.
But they could, correct? Do their own permit?
They could, but these projects already have active permits, so I don't know why they would need to do that.
But I mean, if you don't get your extension, they could come in and have their own permits.
Well, I think what would happen there is we come back and secure the permits before it's transferred. We're just going to be telling the same story that I'm telling you here today. And so the goal here is to get the extension under him. The applications have already been reviewed thoroughly by this body. So we want to move forward.
What did you say the holdup is? I mean, if you want to break ground in spring, obviously, how long is the project from start to finish?
It's about 3 to 4 months.
4 months?
Mm-hmm.
Then, and was ComEd the holdup before?
Yeah, so that's another key piece, and I'm glad you brought that up. So ComEd has communicated to us that the absolute earliest date that they could finish their interconnection upgrades, they have a decent amount of line work to do, some substation work on the Ogdenville project. The earliest date for that would be April 2023. And so either way, this project isn't going to be operational due to those constraints from the utility. What's more realistic, just based on how many projects they have in their queue, is that it's probably going to be more like August, September of next year when they complete their upgrades. Around the same time, these projects would be completed, the construction of these projects. So that is a key component. I mean, even if we were able to get equipment in the ground, they couldn't technically be operational because they couldn't interconnect with the grid by that February date.
Wouldn't that be something that would be beneficial to your company, is to have it all done so that you wouldn't even have to come to here and be ready for when that grid is upgraded through ComEd, so that it was ready and not even having to come to ask for this extension?
What do you mean by that?
You could have built on the site and then waited till ComEd had been done and then connect, or am I speaking?
Yeah, but like I said before, we still have a couple of months of pre-construction work before we're going to be ready to break ground.
I say that because clearly it's a lot of money that you guys are spending. It's a big investment. I have no idea how much money is made from solar farms, but millions is going into this as an investment, I'm guessing, for long term. But if it were this huge investment and so important to your company, I would think that you guys would have started this in March of last year or April of last year, had everything done in the ground and ready to go, so that when ComEd I can't imagine that there'd be any reason why you couldn't have done that.
The main reason is that we didn't have certainty that these projects would have offtake, so those REC contracts from the Illinois Power Agency, until December. And because we didn't have that certainty, we couldn't move forward on key pieces of development. Once we had that certainty, since then, and I'll flip back here. Since then, and this is really just since our last extension, but there's a lot of work that happened between December and February. Since then, we've been moving at a lightning pace. Honestly, the fastest I've ever seen us get a project from what was fairly incomplete development-wise to being essentially construction ready in 10 months or so, and that's fairly typical. It's about a 2-year development cycle for solar projects of this size to get from point A to point B, construction in an ideal scenario, and that's reflected in the length of the permit in Boone County. And so we essentially had to start from scratch, other than our interconnection agreement and the zoning approval from Boone County in December of last year. And since then, we've got a lot done. We still have a bit to go before we can start construction, but we're extremely well positioned, especially with Nexamp coming on board. Their bread and butter really is building and owning and operating community solar projects. They have one in the county already. The Route 76 project. So there's two solar, to my knowledge, there's 2 community solar projects in Boone County, and one of them is developed by Cypress Creek, and the other one is this Route 76 project that's owned by Nexamp. And it's a very successful project, fully subscribed very quickly. There's a lot of demand for these, community solar projects in Illinois right now. And they've been a trusted partner for this county. I think they're trying to be a trusted partner going forward. I know they have other projects that they're looking at here too. So it's really an exciting step forward with them.
Thank you. Sherry, then Tom.
Oh.
Sorry, I know we're interrupting you right in the middle of the
No.
presentation.
Welcome, yeah.
It's mentioned here again, you said there's a 15% reduction in the cost of electricity to those that subscribe. And you talk about again here, there's 380 some families. How do you subscribe? What does that mean?
Yeah, so Nexamp, who's going to be managing these subscriptions for this project, or for both projects, I should say, you're going to subscribe directly through them. And so you pay a small subscription fee in order to kind of get your place in the community solar asset. And then they send you a bill credit, and that 15%, the goal there is to have the bill credit and your bill be a difference of 15%. So you're saving 15% of whatever your electricity bills are.
May I follow up? So individuals have to seek this out from Nexamp, or distribution of information?
I'm sure that they'll probably do some, seeking out on their end in order to get subscribers. I mean, from what I've heard, there's a lot of demand to subscribe to these projects and not enough projects right now. And it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, if I lived in Boone County, I would absolutely subscribe to these projects to save 15%.
Go ahead, Sherry.
And I'm sorry, Tom.
This is your last question.
Your limit.
I don't think you really want to say that to me.
No, I don't.
While I certainly understand, I still remember a story from my sister-in-law who put solar panels on her roof because she wasn't going to have to pay anything. So I said, well, what did you have to pay to have them? Well, she's leasing them. So the point I'm getting here is, trust but verify. So that small subscription fee, I would encourage everyone to take a look at it and see just how small it is and do an ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's a decision that everyone should make as an informed decision. There's some analysis that goes into it, but most of the time it makes sense, especially for folks, who are maybe renting or don't have a roof that's suitable for solar, but want to, participate in some way. Provides them a great option there.
Thank you.
Tom?
Just for the record, I would never say that to anybody that had access to a little wooden mallet.
Well, thank you, Tom, for reminding me. It's right here.
I'm sorry. So just one comment, one question, okay? So first of all, I want to thank you, Paul, for bringing this back to the board. Provide us a little bit more detail. I think that was a good presentation you've given us. You obviously made an investment in your presentation, which I didn't realize last time, to Commonwealth Edison, which is, as Ryan brought up, it's a little bit of your holdup right here, basically.
Yeah.
I too challenge you on getting your work done. I mean, man, why don't you build a project, get it hooked up, and that would kind of been an easier conversation for an extension, right? We could all agree with that. That didn't work out that way. Everybody chooses to manage their business the way they choose to manage it, and that's the decision your company made. So that's where we're at. So I appreciate that and applaud you for doing that. My question is, everybody talks about these fundings and developments, and we're going to spend this money in your community, and I get all that. We don't make solar panels here. We don't make probably a lot of stuff that's you need to build this product. So the funding is local, is kind of a general term, right? Okay, but so let's go with that. We get it built, but the other question is $20,000 your local annual spending per project. That's over $1,600 a month. I mean, what would that be? What would you be buying?
I mean, there could be a lot of things that go into that. General operations and maintenance of the project. If there's parts that they need to procure for a project, it could even be like, I don't know, nuts and bolts.
I think it's great. I just don't.
Yeah. And it's
really feasible.
It's certainly an estimate. It could be lower for sure. But there still is, some long-term investment in the community. I think that's kind of the message here,
Thank you.
Chairman, may I just say something?
Yes, sure. Sorry.
As part of their conditions, so both of these projects do have conditions attached to them. I don't know if you recall, we've gone through several of them. There's over 20, 30 conditions. And so part of that is maintaining a landscaping plan with that they will do in conjunction with the conservation district. And so they have to upkeep that, they have to plant those things. I don't know, those are probably some of the costs that go in there, but I also wanted to remind you that yes, they do have to upkeep some of those things in the conditions. And the permitting process that they will have to go through with building and zoning and like all the other departments that are involved in reviewing their building plans also takes some time to get through. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, just the key word was annual, and I just thought that was a lot.
Sherry?
Okay, I'm one of the few ones on the board that are for solar and for wind. I realize the District 1 and District 2 are not for solar and not for wind. At least that's the word the last time we voted on this. But since then, I have talked to several people who do have total electric homes. And a couple of these people who have these total electric homes, they looked at the comparison before because of what it was with ComEd. And then there was another company coming in. Okay, so they looked at those. Their time was up with this third-party company. And they had the opportunity to go with the company that was presenting them with solar, which they did. And they did buy into going in, or however they did, to getting solar basically as part of their bill. Now, they have over a 2,000 square foot home. during last winter, or before they got the solar, their bill for 1 month was $450. After putting the solar in, it was $225. That's how much using solar in with their electric brought down their bill. And I think we have to look at this when it comes to a solar project. How can we help the people of Boone County and or around here? Because they said they can go to at least do 300 to 400 homes. So my question again is, how can this county board go about helping the people of this county lower their heating bills or electric bills or whatever? I think we have to vote for this, and I know I will. And also there was an article here, it was on CNN, and it had to do with a storm down in Florida. And there was a community down there that was 100% solar, and it endured Hurricane Ian with no loss to any heating or anything in any of those homes. And I know there are at least 2 people on this county board that think, oh, I don't want solar in this area. I don't want solar in Boone County. I would rather have a nuclear plant. And 2 of them have said that. So I really wonder how the people of Boone County would like to have a nuclear plant sitting in the middle of their Boone County. And that's something to consider. Because I'm tired of hearing this. When you come on this board, it can't be your own personal opinion. It must be for the welfare and whatever of this county and the people within this county. And our own personal opinions, they don't matter because you were voted into these seats for the people of this county, not your personal opinions. And with that, I will be backing this solar plant. I will be backing anything that has to do with solar and wind. And even if I'm off the board, I will still be working for solar, and I will be working for wind or anything else other than gas and oil.
How clean is nuclear energy?
How clean?
Yeah. How much emissions are made from nuclear energy?
I can't say that I'm an expert on nuclear energy.
So when we argue that what's better for the people is when we have an administration running a country that pits an energy or a policy to push us away from perfectly clean energy, as in nuclear plants that we have in Byron, then this is the result. This isn't from a county that solar's not saving our county or our country. It's not going to be a sustainable energy source. I'm not saying it's not a great energy source. I'm all for solar. I'm not against solar. I'm for solar in the right areas. And some places that are deemed from rezoning into an industrial, there's very little that we can do to combat that, even though it's being harvested for crops right now. But the reason those energy bills are $400 is because the current administration has cut the energy from gas, and their policies direct reflection of why our bills are so expensive. It's nothing more than that. It happened 2 years ago. We didn't have these problems before then. To roll out to a completely renewable energy source throughout our entire country, as too many states are saying that they want to be on complete electrical grids for vehicles and otherwise. It's to reduce emissions. But I understand what you're saying. I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just telling you, if we want a root cause and we want to pit the different districts against this, or pretend that or label us something that we're not, then you're extremely mistaken. And you don't get to judge us, just like we don't get to judge your opinion on this, because that is your opinion on it. Because had you done your math, you know what nuclear energy does. It's extremely clean. It's cleaner than anything that they're proposing right now.
Well, Ryan, on your last vote for these people, you voted no.
Correct, because it's on tillable land. I value crops over a solar energy farm.
Did you know that some solar projects are set high enough that you can actually, the height of them,
then pitch it.
Actually grow plants underneath them and
I'd love
everything
it.
else?
Then pitch it to us. I'm not against it. I'm for an energy that is efficient to a agriculturally rich community. When people buy homes and farms in this area, they buy them because they are, that's their enticement. They want to see farmland. They want to live in the country. I'm not saying they don't beautify it by adding in contracts, arborvitaes and foliage to surround that. And I appreciate that. Okay. If there were something in a guarantee, when we hear from an energy or from a stray voltage electrical engineer, whether that is you, ma'am, or you, sir, then I'd be more than happy to hear that. But the truth is that's an involvement and there's no guarantee to that. You can come up as an expert, but you cannot guarantee it. And if you did, you'd sign a contract guaranteeing that, which may be something you did. But again, it's not something I'm against. It's not my policy. It's the neighbors that show up that don't want to look at this. You know, it's the people that own these properties that live in Chicago that don't look at this. You know, it's those things. I'm not going to deny every single solar project because I'm not against solar. I appreciate solar. It just has to be in the right areas that benefit everybody and the constituents that pay the taxes in those areas and have lived there forever. So, yeah, sure.
I'd like to just, to follow up with what you've said, I want to read a sentence from your letter, Cypress Creek letter, which is under the subsidies for renewable energy. And it says both solar and nuclear are included as priorities in attaining the state's carbon reduction goals.
Yeah, and there's some information on that on the slide here.
Well, I just wanted to say, you know, nuclear is not bad. We know that it's not bad. And you've even said it in here.
Sure, yeah, it's a part of the transition. I think everybody recognizes that, and you know, nuclear is the largest energy source in Illinois. And you know, as I've kind of outlined here, there is $694 million in carbon mitigation credits going to nuclear plants over a 5-year period. This really threw a lifeline to the Byron nuclear plant to continue operation, at least in the near term during that 5-year period. But the primary issue with nuclear, and I don't want to have this become, you know, a forum on solar versus nuclear because we're here to talk about our projects, and I really want to keep the focus on that. But the problem with nuclear is cost. To build nuclear plants, it's prohibitively expensive, and it takes 15 years. And most of the projects, nuclear projects across the country that have been tried to be built recently have either been extremely delayed or have just failed. And so that's just kind of a reality of what the market is right now, electricity generation.
So, a question on that. So a 10 to 15 year building of a nuclear plant that provides electricity to how many homes in comparison to your 2-year construction that provides energy to how many homes?
I can't say what the typical output of a nuclear plant is. I think that would be highly dependent on where it was built and how
Sure.
it is, right?
Sure.
But for our projects, we anticipate 300 to 400 homes per project. 2 megawatts in size. So that is one of the benefits of solar is it's easy to deploy. It's quick. It only takes, 2 to 3 years. Unfortunately, in the case of these projects, it took 5, but we're almost there. But that is kind of the benefit of solar is it's quick and it does fill a very, very, important need as a lot of these nuclear plants and coal plants and natural gas fired plants are being brought offline because they no longer make sense financially.
Thank you.
One more question. On your 2 megawatt plant, how much more electricity is needed in that area?
I'm not sure. You mean in terms of the load?
Yes.
In that area? I can't say for sure what the demand is in that area. I'd have to look that up and come back to you.
If let's say there's 500 homes in Garden Prairie and your system supplies enough electricity for the 500 homes. If there was any local people wanting to put solar on their own home to invest in their own property, wouldn't that overload the system?
Not necessarily. So typically how this is done with the utility, they do a very extensive study process for any of these new projects. And that outlines what type of equipment needs to be upgraded, or maybe you need a new meter line to go to the project directly. That study process for these 2 projects revealed that there's not any major substation or feeder line upgrades that need to happen for each. It's mostly just kind of minor reconductoring along the electrical line. There's like a short extension for Ogdenville. But there's still, I believe, capacity on the substation and the existing equipment there to house a residential use. The difference in output between a residential use and a community scale project like these is very substantial. And so, a lot of that kind of that available capacity on the utility infrastructure gets eaten up quickly by the community solar projects, but it doesn't really get impacted that much by new residential projects.
Ready? And then we'll let you continue here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, and I'm newer to the board, so I wasn't here.
Ready, you're next.
The preliminary. No, sorry.
Sorry.
So if this is approved, are they both running at the same time? Like, are you working on both of these at the same time? You're not finishing one and then starting on the other one?
Yeah, they'll likely be built concurrently.
And this may be a totally stupid question, but you're saying between 300 and 400 homes, which seems like a big gap. Is that only just because it's based on usage? I mean, you have a cap as far as what you're giving out. So that's 100 home difference.
Yeah, it really comes down to what the electricity usage for each home is.
Got it.
Based on the estimates that we go by, it tends to
So minimum 300, maximum 400.
Sure, it could be more. I mean, it really just depends on what the average usage is. Yeah, so.
Freddie?
Can we go back to the benefits slide? Where I'm looking at is tax revenue. So it says increased property tax revenues for each project parcel to fund vital community services. Every time we say no, that's negating tax revenue that comes into the county. So that's where I'm at, and that's where I'm looking at it from a more broader perspective. I'm just not going to say no to a $4 million investment in our community. I don't know. I don't see how we're going to make something like that up. So.
Sherry, one last question. Then.
I'm going to follow up to Freddie's question because I don't know if you can read the footnote down here.
Oh.
But it says the solar farms will be assessed as real property pursuant to 35 LCS, blah, 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 with cost basis for commercial solar energy system of $218,000 per megawatt of nameplate capacity. I want to know what that translates into real dollars.
Thank you.
Yeah, based on our estimates, it's going to be around $15,000 per project in year one.
Yeah,
and then,
that's the taxes.
That's correct.
So that land right now is being taxed as farmland. So it's what, $40 an acre?
30, 40.
$30 or $40 an acre. So the increase isn't going to be huge. The last time we talked, it wasn't your project, it was $17,000 a year. So it was probably a bigger project. So I wanted that translation into what real dollars are. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks. We jumped around a little bit here.
Herding cats.
No, it's good. It's all a good discussion. So I think maybe what we'll do now is talk through a couple of the other follow-ups from the last meeting. I covered NexAmp and the ownership transfer that's going to occur there imminently. Really excited about that, and I think it's a really positive step forward for these projects, and they're going to do a great job operating them long term. We did touch a little bit on this in terms of state subsidies and how it's kind of an all hands on deck approach here to meet these carbon emissions goals for the state. They're trying to reach net zero by 2030, which is very aggressive. And the goal here is, to have 40% of the electricity mix be from renewable energy by 2030 and 50% by 2040. And right now it's at 10%. Most of that is from wind power. I think maybe only 1 or 2% are from solar. So there's a long way to go there in terms of new construction. I think one thing I did want to note here as well is that, even without these subsidies, solar has emerged as the cheapest source of new electricity based on the levelized cost of electricity. So while they do get, subsidies from the state and also federal subsidies via the investment tax credit that anyone who builds solar has access to. it's still the cheapest source of new electricity. And kind of the overarching thing that I really wanted to highlight here is that this state program's already in place. There's taxpayer dollars already allocated to it. There's funding set up over a 10-year period. So allowing and permitting community solar projects such as Ogdenville and Kish 2 provide a pathway for Boone County to share in the benefits of that statewide program, to get something back from it, essentially. So on agricultural land use, I know this is an issue that is very important for many of the board members here. We strive to be a good partner to agricultural communities that we operate in, and we operate in many across the country and across Illinois. There's a few footnotes over there kind of on what the relationship between solar and agriculture can be, and how it's a really beneficial relationship in a lot of ways. In that, you are temporarily taking this land out of agricultural production, but you're allowing it to lay fallow for the operational life of the project. That can be anywhere from 20 to 40 years. So you can imagine kind of the soil regeneration that can occur during that time frame. At the end of its life, all the equipment will be removed. There's really no permanent impacts to the land other than the concrete equipment pad, which is fairly small. And here's, it's an interesting figure here. In order to reach the state's goals, if all of that solar was going on farmland, it would only take up 0.5% of the total amount of farmland in the state. So, we're not here to convert all the farmland in Illinois to solar. Nobody wants that. But in the case of these two projects, it's something that our landowner has a desire to do. Specifically on Ogdenville, this is a site that has extremely sandy soils, is very well drained. He's had a lot of issues with water retention on the site. He's had to install pretty significant irrigation system there. And I'm not a farmer, so I know you all probably know way more about this than I do, but it's been frustrating for him to farm that parcel. And so that's part of the reason why he's wanted to move on to solar for at least a portion of it. And it really does kind of provide that passive, stable, reliable income for landowners and farmers. It's not up to the whims of the weather on what their yields are going to be, because they know that they have this stable income coming from the solar piece. And so on both sites, we did complete drain tile surveys. Luckily, both sites didn't really have that many drain tile systems on them, but there were a couple, and we're fully avoiding those with the site design. So all drainage on site and off site will be maintained, existing drainage patterns. And just on irrigation, like I mentioned, he has pretty hefty irrigation systems there on site on both parcels. Those fell within our anticipated project area, and we fully funded the relocation of those systems outside of the project area so that he can continue to farm the rest of the parcel on Ogdenville and the parcel to the north on Kish. And so that was, kind of a testament to our partnership with the landowner here. So now to the straight voltage piece. One thing I do want to kind of preface here before I turn it over to Caleb is that, straight voltage is a real issue, and we recognize that. We know that it affects especially dairy farmers and can have negative impacts on livestock. And this is documented by the USDA. But what we're hoping to demonstrate tonight is that based on the way that our systems are designed, they're not designed to generate stray voltage. And I'll let Caleb jump in on that since he's the expert here. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to him.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm an electrical engineer, Kenley Horn. I was brought in as a consultant. I specialize in power system analysis and consulting. It is my job to crunch the numbers on power systems. I have worked in the nuclear industry. I've worked in industrial and renewable generation as well. And a lot of that is performing calculations to determine this exact question, which is how much current and voltage are we seeing in each of the three phases of the power system, as well as the neutral. And I'm actually going to jump forward real quick so that we're all on the same page on kind of our terminology here. So when we're talking about a medium voltage or a high voltage power distribution system, those are the big tall transmission lines you see, or even the distribution circuits that you see, we're usually talking about three-phase power. And so each of these phases are at a very high level of voltage. So it can be anywhere in your neighborhood, it could be anywhere from 12,000 volts up to 500,000 volts, depending on the circuit and just the way the utility has designed it. But the three phases are the ones that are at very, very high voltage, and the neutral is, in an ideal power system, has 0 volts on it. And it's there to serve a purpose, to be able to provide us different options. Like in our home, we all have a neutral wire because that allows us to have both 240 volts and 120 volts. So you can hook up a higher power device into a 240 volt circuit, and then you can also run a bunch of your power on 120 volt, the standard outlets in the wall. And so any of those standard outlets connect to the phase wire and the neutral wire. And in those single phase circuits, the neutral wire is dedicated to carry that current. But in a medium and high voltage power system, the three-phase power system that these solar sites are going to be connecting into, they're connecting directly to the three phases. In fact, these sites won't touch the neutral at all. They have what's called a delta connection. So they only put power onto the three phases, and they do not touch the neutral. The neutral, again, in an ideal power system, has 0 voltage and 0 current. Now, we all know that this is a not ideal power system that we're all working with, and utilities have economic decisions that they have to make. And so in the distribution network, not on the generation side, but in the distribution network, utilities will make decisions to send some current, allow some current down the neutral, even though it's to their financial disinterest sometimes to do that. So, but they want to be able to provide that 240, 120 in your houses. And they also want to be able to provide different voltage options for different needs, like manufacturing facilities and the like as well. So neutral wire is very important, but in an ideal three-phase power system, the neutral carries no current. And so, again, this stray voltage is a real issue. I love what Paul said there. I mean, it is a real issue. It is, we are not denying that in any way, shape, or form. It is documented by the USDA. All of the local states here in the Midwest, the dairy associations put out documentation on how to address stray voltage concerns, how to get in touch with your utility to address them. So, a lot of these issues are caused by on-farm wiring. It's kind of just the nature of, especially when you are provided by one of these single phase services that the utility understands you're going to run power on your neutral, and you have some 240 and you have some 120. And as the nature of farms go, my parents own a 200-year-old farm. Some of this is old, and it may have been done correctly, or it may have not. And again, you can reach out to utilities and they can come on site and support you in resolving some of those issues with the on-farm wiring issues. But there is another cause of stray voltage, and it comes from the utility. And it comes from, but it's specifically not from the generators. It comes from the distribution circuit. And ultimately, it is the way that the utilities have decided to connect customers to the grid. That is where voltage arises in the neutral. That is where current begins to flow in the neutral. And so the generators themselves push balanced three-phase power, no current in the neutral. And in fact, Plant Byron down here is a great example. Huge megawatt output, giant generator as big as this building, and just a 2 or 3% imbalance between the phases that would cause neutral current could cause that entire generator to melt. So they have very strong financial incentives to produce balanced power. They have protection systems that prevent them from pushing imbalanced power. And those imbalances between the phases are what cause that current to start to flow through the neutral and cause voltage to rise. And then in the neutral again, and that neutral voltage, the difference between the neutral and the ground, the earth voltage, that is ultimately what causes stray voltage. And so I think here kind of the bullet here, three-phase generating sources. So we're distinguishing, there's the distribution network, there's all the wires that run around the community. There's the customers that are all connecting into the grid, but the generating sources themselves do not create the imbalance and are not creating the neutral to earth voltage because, again, it's in their financial disinterest and could potentially damage their own equipment if they're trying to push too much power on that neutral. So the last piece I want to bring up here again, and I kind of hinted on it, the electrical protection systems. In the event that power is ever accidentally connected to the ground where it could potentially cause voltage in the ground in the surrounding area, there's very in-depth electrical protection systems on this site, as with all electrical systems. It meets the requirement of the National Electric Code. Section 690 is very specific in how PV solar sites are supposed to be designed for human safety and for also the safety of the electric grid. So there are relays, fuses, circuit breakers, all the way out at where the solar connects to the grid, all the way down to every single individual solar string has its own fuse to prevent current from flowing to the ground. So that's my pitch on stray voltage. I know that was a lot of electrical lingo there. I apologize, but appreciate your patience. So I'll open it up to any questions. I know you already had one, so I'd love to hear it.
So on an open delta system, can you explain how that works?
So on an open, so this is a delta. This is delta, not
but on an open, if the utility company is distributing power with an open delta system, can you explain that?
That's right. So on the open delta system, you have three wires and you're connecting between here and you're connecting here and you're connecting here, but you don't connect the outer two. So that's an open delta system. And yes, in an open delta system, it does create, in terms of if there is a neutral in that network, you could have voltage on that neutral because of the lack of ability for those other two circuits to interact. You're definitely right. Those open delta circuits are occasionally run with neutrals and occasionally not. So I would have to just say it's ultimately on a circuit by circuit basis as to where that imbalance is handled, if it's at the substation or if it's at the end user.
So if you're going back a little bit to the neutral or the nuclear power, if they're, because nuclear plants run very efficient, correct? Like if you got a set amount of electric running 24 hours a day, they run very efficient.
They're what is referred to as base load. They run, it's very hard to start them up and it's very hard to shut them down. So they run at a constant power consistently, yes.
Solar panels produce a lot of power during the day, correct?
That's correct.
They don't produce anything at night?
That's correct.
So if you're adding with solar to the distribution during the day and you have a big nuclear plant in your area producing mega power, and you add more with the solar during the day and none at night, how do you regulate the nuclear plant? How does the utility company regulate the nuclear plant with the loads going up and down?
Yep.
With you guys putting more on during the day and less on at night?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So the answer is they don't regulate the nuclear plant. They allow the nuclear plant to run constant, but they have multiple ways of controlling the voltage to ensure that they're not going to exceed. So there's a couple of factors. There's the frequency of the electric current. There's also the voltage. Now, the power system here is not just made up of a nuclear plant and solar plants. There are dozens and dozens of generating units around. There's battery energy storage systems. There's the Rockford natural gas electric generating plant, and those can be used for more load following operations. They also have what are called static VAR compensators. They do volt VAR control in the generator using the excitation system of the generator. And all of these things allow the grid to maintain, it's in their financial interest, they want to maintain very tight control over the voltage on the grid.
But if there's an unbalance, it goes to the neutral, correct?
The unbalance is only between the phases. The unbalance is not in demand versus generation. If there's an imbalance, if there's too much generation, then the voltage will begin to rise, and the utility has the authority to take off any generation in the vicinity that is causing it to exceed the parameters that it's wanting to. It can also issue commands to, say, the local natural gas plant to reduce its generating, its watt capacity or its VAR contribution into the grid, reactive volts, which is a way of regulating those volts throughout the system. So utilities, I mean, they don't want people accidentally having 150 volts in their 120 volt circuits in their outlets, right? And I know you don't want that either, right? So, but that is kind of a different issue, I guess, from imbalance between the three phases causing current down the neutral.
On the load side, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead and continue.
Yeah, no, and I'll open it up. Any other comments or questions?
For Brent. First of all, thank you, because I think you've taught all of us a lot tonight, and good job on you guys for bringing him. Good move on flying him out here so that he can explain it a little bit. Something that's needed.
So on the distribution of the solar, you're at 2 megawatts, correct? And then that's how they get the tax generated revenue back to the community, correct? Sure. So let's say the utility company, or let's say ComEd has real cheap power from natural gas. Let's say natural gas goes free, or nuclear is real subsidized and it's cheap, and they don't use the solar. How does solar compensate the community with the extra taxes if that's how it's based on the tax revenue?
That's a good question. So
is there a guaranteed base? Let me ask you, is there a guaranteed base that this solar field produces money back into the local economy?
I'll let Paul speak to the contracting side. What I will say is that, Paul mentioned this earlier, utilities are very, very resistant to just putting solar anywhere and everywhere. In fact, they have very specific requirements, and they force solar developers like CCR to go through a very rigorous interconnection process. That application, they hire engineers like myself to run not one, not two, but dozens of analyses on the local power system to assure that the addition of the generation is not going to interfere with any existing equipment. You even heard ComEd is currently doing a lot of upgrades to their local system because they said, this is the right time to do it, but also if we're going to be adding this amount of generation, we're going to put all the equipment down that's necessary to make sure that this allows us to operate as efficiently and effectively as possible. And so the utility has acknowledged that by accepting the interconnection application, the utility is acknowledging that they can accept this 2 megawatts of AC without issue, and that they are doing the necessary improvements to allow that to happen. So I don't want to suggest by saying that they could turn off the solar, that's going to happen every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That's not what's going to happen. The utility has done its due diligence in confirming that this is going to be an acceptable source of revenue. And the National Renewable Energy Laboratory provides tools to the entire industry for free. And these utilities are using these tools. One in particular is called SAM. It allows developers and utilities and local homeowners to go in and assess decades worth of weather data, and including snowfall and all sorts of things, and be able to apply a solar system into this model. And it's able to spit out very, very detailed information on the amount of power that's going to be able to generate on a minute by minute basis across an entire year. So utilities have done that legwork. They know what's coming and they're ready for it.
Thank you. Do you want to follow up with that?
Yeah, did that adequately address your question, or was there another piece?
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
Oh, is there more?
Sorry.
Is there a guarantee in the contracts of revenue coming back to the county if utility company does not purchase your 2 megawatts?
Back to the county
By a tax.
Because taxes are going to be paid regardless of how much the plant
It's
produces.
already set.
Yeah, and that's
If you only produce 1 megawatt, you're still going to pay the $15,000.
Yeah. It's the tax base is based on the nameplate capacity of the system, and that's been locked in at 2 megawatts AC. Even if the system produces less than that, the nameplate capacity is still going to be 2 megawatts. So we're still going to be paying taxes on that 2 megawatt nameplate capacity.
Mr. Walber?
Yeah, I understand. It's just like the value of a home or something like that, similar to that evaluation. Again, just for the record, what was the amount you said in your presentation? I couldn't find it here, that you've already fronted to Commonwealth Edison?
It's $900,000 combined for the 2 projects.
Thank you.
Question. Out of curiosity, what does a 2 megawatt solar farm pay a property owner?
Some of that information is confidential, but generally we're seeing lease rates in Illinois in the 1,000 to 1,500 per acre range.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Sorry if that was inappropriate. I just curiosity.
Yeah, I don't want to get too specific, but that's the general range of what we're saying.
Thank you.
Is that annually?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments before we move to vote to push this to the county board meeting? Go ahead.
Make one more comment. So on 40 acres, they usually my rule of thumb is it takes 1 acre per animal to feed an animal. So if you have 40 acres, that'd be 40 animals. And if I was growing them and raising them for the local community for sustainable meat, that animal's worth about $2,000 in processed meat and everything. So that would be $2,000 per acre. So that'd be roughly $8,000, and that's every year, but that's feeding somebody. I understand this is local energy being generated, but there's two sides of the whole system.
Yeah, certainly. We're not saying every parcel of the county should be solar. There could absolutely be dairy farms like yours.
So I'm sorry, it'd be 80,000.
I was going to say,
I'm sorry.
it's getting late, Brent.
It is. Well, good.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the amount of time we've had to discuss this. I know we've been going a long time, but we do have one more slide here that we'd like to present if we can, and I'll turn it over to Ben for that.
Sure.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time tonight. I introduced myself at the county board meeting last time. My name is Ben Jacoby. I'm an attorney for Cypress Creek and for these projects. I'm at the law firm of Polsinelli. And I just wanted to briefly touch on the break Izzy's pointer on the legal standards. So I'm the lawyer, so I deal with the legal stuff. Just wanted to remind the board that the special use permits have already been approved. The findings have already been made, as Izzy indicated. So the county has already found that the standards have been met for special use under section 2.7.3. And I wanted to touch briefly on the conditions in the special use ordinance that were passed back in 2018, at the end of 2018. In particular, condition 37, because these projects have and will continue to meet all of the conditions in the ordinance except for the expiration date, which is why we're seeking the extension. But condition 37 states, due to the nature of the development, the typical 12-month timeline for establishment of a special use is extended to 24 months. And then it gave an expiration date. So these projects have always been designed as a 2-year development cycle. That's something that's been recognized by the county ever since the very first special use permit application came in. And that's something that the county had observed. Now, unfortunately, your ordinance only allows 1-year extensions at a time. So there was this delay that Paul described throughout the years until basically February 2022, when CEJA was passed, when the adjustable block program was reopened for these projects, and when this county extended the special use at that time, the project was really greenlit to start. to start development. So that's really when the 2-year development kicked off in full gear. And you saw all the things that Paul and the company did during that time up till today. So what we're requesting now is the next year of the development cycle, which is something, again, that has always been in the spirit of the ordinance, the 2-year development cycle. And that's why the request is being made under section 2.7.7, the next year, the 1-year extension, which is all we can ask for and all you can give, and all that you gave before. That's what we're requesting here under in this proceeding. I also wanted to just do a couple of quick house cleaning notes. We do ask respectfully that the commission take up each project separately so that we have a record for each one of the applications. You have 2 applications. I believe last time you took them up at the same time, but these will go to the board, and we would request, you don't have to, but we would request that you take them up. You vote on each one of them separately. And second, just a procedural note under your county ordinance, and I think this was a little confused last time and a little confused on our part. It is our understanding that under your ordinance, the county board has to act on these extension requests. And so the issue being considered by the committee today is whether to recommend the extensions to the county board, and then they'll go to the county board for final vote and decision, which I think is what was going to happen at the last county board meeting, but I don't think that's exactly how the motion was communicated in the committee. So we just want to make sure that the proceedings and the record are clear on those issues. So that's the law as we see it. Take any questions on that. Otherwise, turn it back up to Paul to conclude.
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all again for the amount of time we've had to discuss our request tonight. We're really asking that you please consider these projects on their individual merits and the benefits that they're going to bring to Boone County. I realize there's been a lot of walk talk tonight about nuclear and subsidies and stray voltage and all of this. And, we came here tonight with these folks to really try to show the committee that, take your concerns seriously. We want to address them, and we want to be as good of a partner to Boone County as we can. All we're asking in return is for this 1-year extension on these 2 projects. So thank you so much for your consideration, and I'll wrap there.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments before we vote to move this to the county board meeting?
Question.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, for the, not sure your title.
Yeah.
Mr. Electrician. On the stray voltage, it sounds to me like there's basically points in the electric grid, basically, where this can occur. Does, say, ComEd go and test the areas to see if there's anything reaching the ground ever? Or?
Yeah, I put this on the record. So there's a couple of elements to that. One is what's called ground fault detection, and utilities use ground fault detection mostly in their substations, but out as the distribution network gets farther away from the substation, that ground fault detection becomes maybe less reliable. And so I will just say on the stray voltage issue specifically, if you are noticing stray voltage at your residence or farm or place of business, it would be appropriate for you to talk to ComEd, and they can come and do testing to identify if there is some stray voltage in your neutral wire, or if maybe there's what's called step or touch potential rise, where a conductor is connected to the ground in some way and is making a dangerous situation for people. And you could potentially touch something or take too big of a step, and that's enough voltage there to cause physical harm. So absolutely, I would say ComEd is your go-to contact for that.
So they don't regularly go around and do this once a year or something, maybe check by their substations or anything? Or is there, with the gadgets we have nowadays, you know, maybe there's a, like you say, there's a sensor at there, so they actually just.
Most of the industry is using, full-blown, very powerful computers to do this. And those computers are called digital relays, and they exist in every substation just about in the world. And these digital relays are capable of taking measurements that the utility will review. And if they see something off, you know, they have a regular cycle that they have to go to the substation and grab the data and look at it and make some assessments from it. And it may direct them to some corrective action where they change one of the protective settings to acknowledge the issue. And it's a balance of operability. They don't want, you know, every person sticking something in a light socket to take out the whole neighborhood. You know, they also want to keep people safe. I mean, they do have concern.
Just another question, maybe Izzy or one of you could probably. For either of these locations, did any of the surrounding property owners or neighbors have any complaints about or issues with these facilities being located where they are?
In the recent times where we've had this come up, no, we haven't had anything.
Yeah, I can speak to on the Kish 2 project. There is one neighbor who's across the street and a little bit north. We've worked with him and we've proposed a vegetative screen on that corner of the project to help shield his view. And so that's been a good interaction with him. I think we're in a good place in terms of his view of the project.
Okay, and I think when we're looking at these on the Ogdenville one, is there any screening on that one? Because there's not the actual stuff on our thing.
There isn't any screening proposed with our site plan, but there is a line of trees that goes along the west side of Garden Prairie Road there. It's kind of hard to see on
the west side of the Garden Prairie Road.
Yeah. So on the east side of the project, essentially.
You know, that's actually just basically trees that are barely clinging on the edge of a ditch there.
Yeah, it's deep ditch.
And there's a school and there's houses on the east side of Garden Prairie Road.
It's going to be.
And also on to the south of it, there's houses. There's not going to be any screening anywhere between it and the houses.
I think there's maybe an abandoned house just south of the project area. I don't believe any of those are current. And there's just to the southeast, I believe it's like a junkyard or a scrap yard or something.
It's a commercially zoned district.
Yeah.
So it's not residential.
And there's a railroad that goes just south of the project as well.
Yeah, there's the railroad right on the south side of the railroad tracks. There's that's Garden Prairie Road and 20, right?
Yeah.
Are the main streets there? There's houses all along the south side of that railroad track.
Probably about 2,000 feet away, I'd say.
Not adjacent to the project.
Panels, yeah.
I know it's not adjacent, but it's when those people look out their windows, that's what they're going to see.
Far.
Pretty far.
The railroad.
I don't think it's very as far as you think it is, but I live to the southeast of that intersection, like not maybe a quarter mile. I drive by this all the time. It's not as far as you think, away from either of the roads there. I don't know, I'm just concerned that these people probably don't even know this is happening because they're not adjacent property owners, so they're not notified. And out of nowhere, they're going to see a field of solar panels.
They wouldn't have been notified anyway. Yeah. It's only adjacent property owners that get notified.
And when was the original stuff done on this? Has it been 3 years?
It was 2018. So it's been 4 years.
December 2018.
December 2018.
When the original ordinance was passed.
Yep.
And we extended it in the summer of 2020 and February 2022. Each of which took place at public public meetings.
Go ahead, Ray.
If I could keep going on for just a minute here. So is this the original plan still, the siting of this? Because the original plan was to have a railroad loop go all the way around the outside of this property.
Yeah, that's correct. That was the original plan. That project unfortunately didn't go through for the landowner. It just moved in a different direction. In terms of the actual solar array itself, it's still in the same location as it was before. It's just that previously there was a rail loop proposed around it, and now there's no longer that loop there. But the landowner is actively looking at other ways to utilize his, direct land connection to the railroad there. That's something he's made clear to us, that he wants to still have access to that, both, from the east and from the south. And so we take that into account with our design.
Would you be opposed to putting a buffer on the east and west side, or east and south side of this?
It's certainly something that we could pursue if it is that you vote for the extension. I think if that's something that the board wants, that's certainly something that we can pursue. It's not something that was included in our original review of the project. But at this stage, if it means getting the vote, we can do it.
Would you like to make an amendment?
Did you have a comment, Ms. Keith?
I want to call the question.
Sure. How would we approach, first, before we get to that, how would we approach that if that were to be something in agreement, or, I don't know.
To the conditions? Yeah, I was going to ask Tricia to speak on that.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not sure at this point, you could require them to do that. I think that if there is an agreement to add that to the conditions, but I'd have to look into that. That's certainly something that we could do and get you that answer for sure before the board meeting in 2 weeks. So if there's a desire from the board to look into that, we can certainly do that and get you an opinion.
I would appreciate that.
Sure.
I think would help if you're in agreement of listening to that.
Certainly. We want to work with you all here.
Sharon?
Well, I guess I would not pursue that unless we talked with the people that live there. Maybe they don't want, something. So I think that would be before we decide this is what we need to do. I think we should check in with.
Necessary.
Pardon?
It's not necessary.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
I think that's a very fair point.
Pardon?
All right. I guess Tricia will look into that. I'm not sure there are homes close, and I don't know. I'm thinking it must be a different place. Ray, you know it better, the area better than I do.
Can we look into that and provide some additional?
If you had the aerial view of the property, you could see it.
Along the south side of the railroad tracks, all individual property owners, it looks like there's there's about 12 property owners along the south side of the tracks there, that this is their property, this is the industrial area. And here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's 12 homes along the railroad tracks. So there's the property. And where Dan, where your cursor is, moving over a little, right, those 12 properties right there. Would be
Properties right up here, Brett?
yes, that would be where the solar project would be
This
to
is the
the,
railroad right here?
yes.
Where's the project?
Project's up here. Is this the railroad, Brett?
Yes.
Right here? Okay, just saying, they're looking at a railroad already.
Fabricator, that's zoned.
Here, correct? Zone commercial, and he already has interest of putting something there to utilize the railroad, correct?
We have a better site.
That's fine.
Slow down.
It is an industrially zoned parcel, kind of coming back to that piece. If the landowner wants to build a warehouse on this parcel, and that's what these neighbors had to look at, that's certainly on the table, and they can do that without a permit. I don't know if that's off the table for the landowner or not. But solar in general is, it's fairly low height. The tracker panels are, barely over 10 feet high, even at full tilt. And so it's a pretty unobtrusive, addition to your view, even if you can't see it from these houses.
But if there was a rail in that area, the panels would have to be moved?
No. So, we worked with the landowner on this, and I don't think he's looking into the rail loop project at all anymore. But I think there's still, some interest on his side in maybe putting in a grain silo or something there along the railroad line. But likely, outside of the project area, so it wouldn't affect the project at all.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we vote? You want to vote roll call or just do?
Let's do roll call.
So this is for both of them together?
Yeah, I think the request was to do them separate. Is that correct?
If you don't mind, do maybe.
Oh, I'm okay with that.
Issue Ogdenville first and then.
Go ahead.
So the motion now is, first will be to separate the two projects.
I don't know that we need a motion to separate them.
I don't.
Can't we just, Trish, can't we just,
I would just say whoever made the motion originally and seconded it, if you could withdraw it and then redo the motion.
Withdraw the motion.
Both the motion's been withdrawn by Ray Larson.
Withdraw the second.
Who seconded it? Freddie De La Trinidad?
Yep.
Thank you. And now we will.
It's at the beginning of the letter.
Let's just do two votes.
Case number 34, 2018. First page.
First, we will make a motion to move forward the county board special use extension permit for Ogdenville Solar, case number 34-2018 to the county board.
And I'm sorry, I think the action is not to move it forward. I don't want to be too particular here, but I think the action is whether to recommend, to recommend the granting of the extension to the county board. So when you say to move it forward, it suggests that if you deny the request, then it doesn't move out of committee. And I think the action is, it will move out.
We are the county board.
I'm sorry?
We are the county board.
You're the committee of the whole, right? I know. I know that the difference is nominal, but I mean, the committee of the whole has to move it to the county board with a recommendation.
We're going to do it just how I said it, but I appreciate it.
Mr. Curry, I mean, he is correct. It is a motion to recommend approval to the county board. So no matter what the vote is tonight, it will still move forward.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the special use permit extension request for Ogdenville Solar case 34-208 and recommendation to the county board.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Freddie De La Trinidad. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Sherry Geesey, yes. Ray Larson,
Aye.
Brent Mueller,
No.
Brian Curry,
Yes.
Tom Wahlberg,
Aye.
Alicia Patterson,
Yes.
Bill Robertson. Oops, I'm sorry, excuse me, Sherry Bartelt. Yes. Rodney Riley,
No.
Freddie De La Trinidad.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next motion will be to recommend for approval special use permit extension request case 332018 Kish Solar 2 project.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Sherry Bartelt. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Sherry Geesey, yes. Ray Larson,
Aye.
Brent Mueller,
No.
Brian Curry,
Yes.
Tom Wahlberg,
Aye.
Alicia Patterson,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt, yes. Rodney Riley,
No.
Freddie De La Trinidad.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you. All righty. 9.5, need a motion to move ordinance 22-21 MA-312022 Mettings map amendment forward to the Boone County for approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, Seconded by Freddie De La Trinidad. Discussion? Go ahead, Izzy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, this is a map amendment request located west of Borough Road in Boone Township. This is currently a very wooded parcel, an old tree farm. At approximately 13 acres, and it's currently zoned A1 Agricultural Preservation District. The applicant is seeking, as I mentioned, a rezoning from A1 to A2. This is another one of those newer applications that we worked on so hard, and actually Mr. Meddings has been with us from the beginning of our lot of record discussions. So again, this is going to be rezoning approximately 5 acres to build a single family home. There actually is an existing clearing towards the rear of the property where there's a little pond. So a large portion of the tree areas will remain untouched. If you saw from the agenda items that I uploaded, he did provide a narrative with a lot of pictures and some of which I've provided here. This is a really cool aerial that he provided and I wanted to include it. So here's the pond and like an old shack. And like I said, some clearing where he's proposing to build the home. If you see here, it's a little bit gray, but the proposed single family home is up here. So again, this is a newer ordinance that was passed in May 2022, section 3.3.3, rezoning to A2. So the applicant has to meet one of 3 conditions, and in this case, he meets the tree cover condition. Over 50% of the property has to be wooded. In this case it is. He also has to provide a site plan, which he has, and the rest of the conditions will be approved during the permitting process when he applies for the permit for the single family home from the health department and the highway department. Other agencies did review this project. A building permit would be required, and the Boone County Soil and Water Conservation District voted favorably as well. The findings of fact are a little bit different for these cases. So we look at what are the existing uses in the area. So north is agricultural. Actually to the south is an industrial district from the village of Capron. And there's more agricultural and residential uses to the east and to the west. What are the zoning classifications in the area? A1 Agricultural Preservation District, and then restrictive industrial to the south there for the village of Capron. So this would be compatible with the adjacent zoning district. So here's just a zoning map. We have our property here and the rest is agricultural as well. But if you note, these parcels with the larger red numbers all are single family homes, and we have an adjacent one right there as well. Continuing on with the findings of fact, would the proposed use be allowed currently? Typically, if you have an A1 parcel, you could build a single family home if the parcel is original to 1978. In this case, it is not. Therefore, it essentially would not be. However, the rezoning would still maintain the parcel as agricultural, but would allow that single family home. What's the trend of the development in this area? The general trend is a mix of residential and agricultural, as you saw from the zoning map, and you'll see also from the comprehensive plan. And finally, what does the comprehensive plan say about this parcel? And what it says is residential. So it really is in line with not only the zoning, but the comprehensive plan. So here's the comprehensive plan. As you see, again, here's our parcel. Yellow is residential. All these other parcels that I pointed out in the zoning map are have single family homes and are now slated as residential as well. At the zoning board of appeals public hearing, there were no concerns from ZBA. There were no other public comments. The zoning board of appeals voted in favor 4-0 on the findings of fact, and they voted in favor on the map amendment 4-0. Staff is also recommending in favor. Thank you. Mr. Meddings is here. If the chair would like to, or if the board, I'm sorry, the committee would like to hear more or have questions for him.
Mr. Meddings, sure. Would you like to add to it? Anything?
No, I really don't have anything to add to that, but if you have questions.
Okay. Questions on the floor for Mr. Meddings or what's in the panel? Go ahead, Sharon.
I don't have a question, but no, I don't have a question.
Oh, okay.
But that's number 2. We were successful. There's a lot of record, and thank you for sitting through that torture that you just went through for hours. We apologize, but that's great. Good.
And remember, Mr. Meddings and Doug Ferry, who was our previous applicant, have been with us from the beginning of our lot of record discussion. So
It was over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to be a 6-month or a 4-month thing. All right. Any other questions?
Hey, it was just a little longer than the meeting we just had.
Government. Any other questions or concerns before we vote? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Motion carries.
Carries. Thank you. You. Motion 9.6, I need a motion to move ordinance 22-22 TA 33-2022 Borough Tax Amendment forward to the county board for approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Rodney Riley. Discussion? Izzy, do you have anything to add to that one?
So I just want to give a quick background. Excuse me. So this text amendment is actually associated with the next special use permit that you will see. The text amendment, or I'm sorry, the special use is contingent upon this text amendment being approved. Essentially, the applicant is requesting this text amendment in order to be able to have the use of being able to park one semi-cabin trailer be permitted or considered as a special use in their zoning district. Their zoning district is A2, and that's when we look at the ordinance. The use of parking a semi-cabin trailer is not considered as a special use in A2, but it is considered in A1. So if we've discussed A1 and A2 at length, we know that they are quite similar. And when we looked at the uses in both, they were really aligned with one another. And this is one of those that wasn't. So again, the use is considered as a special use in A1, but not in A2. So this text amendment would align them both to be the same. So for reference, the applicant that's requesting this text amendment is located here, and everything else is A1 and then A2 here as well. So again, currently our ordinance doesn't consider the use as a special use, but it does in A1, and so the amendment would then consider it as a special use. At the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing, there were no other public comments, no concerns from the ZBA, and the Zoning Board of Appeals voted in favor of the text amendment 4-0. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Motion carries.
9.7, need a motion to move ordinance 22-23 SCP 34-2022 Brummel Palka. I hope I said that right. Special use forward to the county board for approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Brett Mueller. Discussion?
Thank you. All right, so this site, again, is contingent upon the text amendment and why they are applying for the special use permit now. The site is located at 18687 Burr Oak Road, currently improved with a single-family home and some detached structures. It's located in Leroy Township, approximately 5 acres, and it is zoned A2 agricultural residential. The applicant is seeking a special use permit to allow the parking of one semi-cab and trailer on their property. They, according to their site plan, they have proposed the parking to be towards the rear of the property, away from that right of way. But they've also have a second driveway, a gravel driveway, as pointed out by their site plan, which is actually already prepared and would be used for that purpose. When we look at our zoning ordinance, again, if the text amendment is approved, it would consider this use as a special use permit. When other agencies reviewed this project, there were some comments from the Boone County engineer in the highway department. He has heard concerns about semi-cab and trailer traffic on Burr Oak Road, concerns with the width of Burr Oak, structural integrity, and some 90-degree turns that are not conducive for semi-cab and trailer traffic. And so I wanted to look at that. So if you see here, our location is right here. The curves that are located on Burr Oak Road are located south of the property here. And then Hunter Road is actually approximately half a mile from the property. And the applicant during testimony stated that actually their semi-cab and trailer would be coming from Hunter Road and less than half a mile to their property where the parking would be. So again, the semi will park on the property. It's not a loading or unloading process. It's a beginning and an end to what the semi-cab and trailer would be doing. The other thing that was interesting when we look at this area is that any farm-related activities that require semi-cab and trailers are permitted by right. And so we would never see those permits come through. So when semi-cabin trailers are required to go through, they could just go through. So that was something else that we considered, or that I considered. Planning Commission did review the comprehensive plan. Future intended use is residential, so we know that it's an A2 district, more related to agricultural. Nonetheless, it would still be compatible. This is a semi-cabin trailer that is owned by the residents that lives in the home, and is part of what they do, and comprehensive plan goals and objectives that could be met actually, again, strengthening a business in our community, but also promoting entrepreneurship. Planning Commission did vote in favor 3-0. When we look at the findings of fact, the proposed use is unique because it really is just parking the semi-cabin trailer based on what the owner does. It's not a typical like interest to the public, but it is a service that's provided by the work that they do. The proposed use is not anticipated to have negative effects in regards to the zoning districts in the area. As I mentioned, some of these zoning districts can have semi-cabin trailer traffic by right. The proposed use would not impede adjacent development. Again, it's a starting and an end place only in an agricultural residential district. The use is highly regulated. It must comply with weight limits and be in good standing with the Illinois Department of Transportation. It is required to conform to all the applicable regulations in the zoning district. The use would be reviewed by appropriate county departments, and there are no other impacts to the surrounding districts. Again, the use isn't typical. It's a beginning and starting place, not typically producing traffic. Excuse me. At the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing, there were no other public comments. The Zoning Board of Appeals, as staff, also had this dilemma. We considered the Highway Department's comments. And so after some discussion, they voted to include that the Road Township Commissioner would have to review this and be in agreement and approval of this. That amendment passed 4-0. After reviewing the findings of fact, Zoning Board of Appeals approved them 4-0. And then the Zoning Board of Appeals also approved the special use permit with that condition that I just mentioned, 4-0. So staff is recommending moving all of that forward as well.
Okay. Thank you, Izzy.
Heather Brummel is here if you have additional questions or if she would like to.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for the application? Go ahead, Brett.
What kind of, is it a van trailer or is it flatbed? Okay.
Any other questions or concerns? Go ahead, Tom.
I mean, I guess the only concern, and I think Izzy addressed it with the Highway Department, or road commissioner there for the township, would be, posted roads with it, would you be coming home loaded? You got 80,000 pound vehicle loaded, right?
Yes, we would obviously meet the weight limit, posted signs. Our plan is to always come home empty. There's a chance, obviously, if we can't make the delivery on time or if there's traffic or an accident or what have you. Like I said, that's very minimal. When we do, the equipment will stay on the flatbed. It will not come off the flatbed onto the property and have to be reloaded or anything of such.
Any other questions?
And just to follow up with that, I did speak with Mr. Donnelly, who is the Road Township Commissioner. Again, he is aware of this project and he had no concerns.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I just had to make my one snarky comment of the night, but we can let garbage trucks run up and down the roads like crazy.
Noted. All those in favor say aye.
Saying.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Item 9.8. I need a motion to move ordinance 22-24 SUP 36-2022 Quality Aggregates LLC Special Use 4 to the County Board for approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Brent Mueller. Discussion, Izzy?
Thank you. All right. This site is located at 2758 Wheeler Road. It's currently a quarry located in Florida Township, approximately 235 acres, 2 parcels. It is zoned A1 Agricultural Preservation District. So this is a little bit unique because this is an active, ongoing special use permit. It's actually an approved, judge-approved, court-ordered special use permit from 2002. And so they require special use permit renewals every 5 years. Which they have been getting for the past 20 years or so. So the renewal would allow continued quarry-related activities. And then this is an opportunity to review more conditions, and which we have with the applicant, and they are requesting to include the recycling of concrete and asphalt materials on the property. And so that's what zoning board looked at. So when we look at the zoning ordinance, there's some earth material extractions that are considered as a special use in A1 and others that are not. In this case, again, it was a court-ordered special use permit. So when the special use permit was approved, the renewal was set for 5 years. The applicant is seeking an updated renewal date of 10 years, as well as that additional condition that was spoke of that would allow the recycling of non-aggregate materials, not production of that, but just recycling. So in early 2019, actually the zoning ordinance was amended to include renewals for earth material extraction related activities from anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So this actually would be right in line with what they're requesting, as well as looking to the history of another quarry who at that same time also received a 10-year extension from their typical 5. So this would be the time then to switch them over. Sent this out to other agencies and there were no other comments with this. So when the Planning Commission looked at the comprehensive plan, it is industrial. So industrial is intended for a variety of light and heavy industrial uses. The use is compatible with its current uses and designation, as well as the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan goals and objectives. Again, we are strengthening an existing business, promoting small business ventures. Planning Commission did vote in favor 3-0. When we look at the findings of fact, again, the proposed use is existing. It has an ongoing active special use permit. The additional recycling actually does not require any new structures, any machinery. It can actually be done with the same machines. It's not production, there's no blasting. So it would not be would not cause more negative effects. The proposed use is not anticipated to have any other impacts. They are mitigated again with conditions. So as I mentioned, it is an existing special use permit with an ordinance with a long list of conditions that they have to abide by and that they have continued to abide by. The proposed use is not anticipated to have negative effects on the surrounding area. They must comply with the conditions, as I mentioned. When I did check with building and zoning, they had received a complaint about hours of operation. So they cannot operate on Sundays. And actually Quality Aggregates addressed that immediately right away. So they had customers that were accessing the quarry on a day that weren't supposed to. And so they posted, I believe, larger signage, as well as sent notices to every single one of their customers that they are not to access the quarry on Sunday. So it was addressed right away and there had been no other concerns. So again, it is required to conform to applicable regulations. The use would continue to be subject to review by appropriate county departments. One of the conditions does require a review and a site visit from our building and zoning department. Again, the use is existing since its court ordered approval in 2002. At the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing, there were no other public comments. The Zoning Board of Appeals voted to amend the current condition, which is number 1, which allows for a now 10-year renewal, as well as adding a new condition to include recycling of non-aggregate materials, which is concrete and asphalt. That passed 4-0. Zoning Board of Appeals voted to approve the findings of fact 4-0, and then they voted to approve the special use permit with those 2 amended conditions 4-0. So I don't know if the committee was able to look at all the conditions and we can go through them. Again, these are the conditions that have carried them over the last 15 years. The only thing that we will be changing is condition number 1, or we're proposing to change if the committee and the board approves, from 5-year renewal to 10, and then adding that condition that would allow the quarry to recycle concrete and asphalt. Again, not produce it, no blasting, but just to be able to recycle those materials. I know Mr. Noble, Attorney Noble is here as the representative of the application if he would like to add something or if the committee has questions. Thank you.
Questions in the boardroom? Comments? Tom?
So maybe just a question, clarity. Izzy, on this, so 10 years, it says that zoning enforcement officers, they're going to inspect the property.
That's right.
6 months to twice a year.
Yes.
Is that right?
And that continues. Again, those conditions are all moving forward. So yes, and again, I spoke with building and zoning.
That would be Drew.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments in the boardroom before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Motion carries.
Item 9.10, motion to move. 9.9. Item 9.9, motion to move ordinance 22-25 PUD 372022 NGO special use forward to the county board for approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Freddie De La Trinidad. Izzy?
Thank you. This site is located at 2630 Spring Creek Road. This may look familiar. This is the location of an existing mobile home park, but there's approximately 4 acres there that are open land. So it's located in Belvedere Township, approximately, like I said, 4 acres that we're going to be talking about, and it's currently zoned A1 Agricultural Preservation District. The applicant is seeking a plan development, which requires the same type of review as special use. So we'll be using those terms together. So they are requesting to subdivide the area west of the mobile home park into one parcel of 4 acres. So that means that they are now going to be containing the mobile home park into its own parcel and then taking the 4 acres to the west as its second parcel and then rezoning it from A1 to RE. And this would allow one single family home. So this is done through a plan development because it can no longer be done either by a subdivision of 5 acres or more, and it cannot be done as a rezoning from A1 to A2 because it doesn't meet the conditions. So it must go through a plan development process. And with plan development processes, you can add conditions as well, which you'll see that we have added some. So this is a preliminary process, which will require a final review, which will include a final plat that you will see where the entrance is going to be and the second parcel that's, again, approximately 4 acres. So when we look at the zoning of the area, so the mobile home park is zoned A1 Agricultural Preservation District, and it's right here, but it's completely surrounded by residential districts, R1 single family and RC, which is a residential conservation district. And so the most compatible would be RE, which is our ex-urban residential district. And this would allow for larger parcel for a single family home, but then it would also allow horses as an accessory to the home. So it would still maintain a little bit more of that agricultural area. Again, it's a 4 acre parcel. The zoning ordinance, again, we look at a plan development process as a special use. So that's why you're seeing it now, and you're going to see again that final process if this is approved. Other reviewing agencies, so the highway department wanted to make sure that we looked at traffic impacts and visibility, but the township had no concern. So when the project originally came forward, it had multiple driveways, and that has been eliminated. It's only going to be one parcel zoned RE, one driveway, one single family home. And so the township road commissioner was more agreeable to one private drive into the property off of Spring Creek. The Planning Commission looked at the comprehensive plan. The future intended use is residential. As I mentioned, everything around there is already zoned residential. That's the only one that's A1. So it is intended for residential use. It would be compatible not only with its current use and designation, but the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan goals and objectives, diversifying housing needs for the population. So Planning Commission voted in favor, 3-0. When we looked at the findings of fact, the proposed use would be beneficial to the area. It is in line with the trend of development. Not only that, but the proposed use is not anticipated to have negative effects. It is going to further make the property lines of the mobile home park more concrete. And again, I know some questions come up with the mobile home park, but anything that happens at the mobile home park requires a public hearing by the various boards and commissions. So in this case, it is not expanding anything. It's actually now getting its buffers in place even more. The proposed use is not anticipated to have negative effects on the surrounding development. It is going to be residential, just like everything else around it. It is required to conform to applicable regulations. The use would be subject to appropriate county departments, and it does require that final review with a final plat. So it's not anticipated to have any adverse impacts. At the public hearing, public comments included what other developments can occur with the rezoning. Nothing except residential because it's RE and only one single family home. Is there the mobile home park expanding? No, it's not. We're actually now putting more buffers in place. And again, if anything happens with the mobile home park, it requires a public hearing that you guys will hear about. What can happen with the current field located north of the subject property? essentially more homes. It's already zoned R1, which is a single family residential district. So even though right now it might be trees or wooded or farmed, it already is zoned R1. So, but there are no plans at all for anything that has come through my office. ZBA had no further concerns. They voted to approve the findings of fact 4-0, and they voted to approve the plan development 4-0. So staff is also recommending in favor with these conditions. So the subdivision should include only one parcel, and the rezoning would be to RE to include and adhere to the standards and uses in that district, which again would be one single family home and only one private entrance for this parcel. So I know that the applicant is on the line if you have additional points you want to clarify or if you have questions for me. Thank you.
Any questions in the boardroom? Tom Wahlberg?
Okay, so 2 questions. Looking at the aerial map, there's a tree line that I think maybe you defined this. Is that where you're trying to make this, is that how you're getting your 4 acres at that tree line, assuming it's a diagonal line or?
It's proposed to be right here, right on the side of the mobile home park. So
I'm looking at the colored map and there's a pretty clear tree line. Okay, so the follow-up question to that then, that's fine. To your point, this other is zoned R1. How would they gain access to that if they sell that off? I mean, obviously it goes through the mobile home park. I'm
Can't
guessing.
get to it from the subdivision next to it.
You mean like north of that, this is, I recognize it's the same owner, right? The individual that owns to the north of that, you said was owned, because we did that text amendment last meeting.
yeah, but it was only the easement that they were now selling.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. In your presentation, that north of that is zoned R1.
That's right.
Okay. So if it's zoned R1 and you're going to have houses in there, how would you gain access to that property?
There's access.
Other subdivision?
Yeah. You'd have to go through the mobile home park if that property is sold.
I don't have the greater.
Subdivision to the west,
Yeah.
I believe, goes down into a valley and goes left and right. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing they'd have to probably.
I didn't have the map zoomed out enough to show you, Tom, but your hand is pulling it up.
Right, but if you keep going.
Oh, look,
Yeah.
and access is north of those trees?
Yep.
It's off of White Road.
Yeah, you can kind of see.
They own that property.
There you go, Tom, right there. This whole parcel is the one we're talking about.
Owner owns that.
Well, yes, but we're actually not talking about, I mean, the subject property is down here, owned
Yep,
by.
I totally get it.
Sorry. Yep.
And stop the arrow, the red dot left up. That's the property that's encased, closed by trees, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
So that was like, how would you get access to that if you had to come off the Spring Creek Road?
Oh, town hall.
You come off Town Hall, because to your point, it's the same owner. Right.
Yeah, and actually, I think this is all one parcel, even though it's tree lined. But it's all one owner, so yes.
That answers the question.
Okay, sorry.
Very clear. Got it. Thank you.
I think it's, everybody gets scared when they hear subdivision.
I know.
You know, and I get that you're dividing, so that's the current language, but, any other questions or comments? Ray Larson?
The trailer park area, is that a municipal septic system?
I don't.
Septic system.
I
think so.
I don't know if
Believe it.
Mr. Thomas, if you.
Yes, hello. So I'm Thomas. I'm one of the managing members of the park. There is a septic system on site, correct?
Is it going to remain on the trailer parks parcel, or will it?
Yeah. So the septic system is to the east of the mobile home park, where the homes are, and then there is a septic system that services about 3 homes to the northeast of where the subdivided parcel is going to be. So that's where we're going to have to do a survey and make sure that we keep that portion available for those homes. But the main septic system is to the east of the homes.
Which is why you'll see an actual survey plat during the final review.
Any other questions or comments before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Motion carries.
Motion carries.
Thank you, board.
Thank you. Item 9.10, need a motion to move RP 382022 Johnson replat forward to the county board for approval.
So move.
Motion made by Ray Larson, seconded by Sherry Bartelt. Izzy?
This is a typical replat from Candlewick Lake. They are actually replatting lots 130 and 131 from Candlewick Lake Unit number 3 into Lot BB with the vacation of public utilities. Actually, if you look at the map, there's already the home that's kind of built towards the center of the parcel because it was already combined. So this new replat would actually now update all of our maps as well as Candlewick Lake maps to create one lot, which will now be BB. So any changes to any sort of drainage easement or anything like that has to be reviewed by the highway department, or I'm sorry, our county engineer. The replat is in conformance with our subdivision and zoning ordinances. So staff is recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 9.11, motion to approve ordinance 22-26, amending section 2-79, county administrator of the Boone County Code of Ordinances.
So moved.
Motion made by Ray Larson. Seconded by Brent Mueller. Discussion. Tricia, do you want to touch base on the changes that are made? Do you have anything to add to this?
Sure. You'll see in front of you, hopefully, a red line document that has the proposed changes. And this came about based on a meeting with the chairman, the vice chair, and the chairs of the committee. And one of the things that had been talked about was removing from the county administrator's duties was to supervise positions that by statute are appointed by the board. And as of now, there's only 2, but it could change in the future. So that's why we did not list them specifically, but it's the county engineer and the supervisor of assessments. And so you can see from the new paragraph B, we've combined B and C to make that change. Everything else basically would make the same, other than if there was going to be a discharge of any employee by the county administrator, the county board would be able to approve that. Otherwise, it was just kind of minor changes, including listing my office when a county administrator was going to draft and recommend legislation. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about that language or the purpose behind it.
Tricia, I know we've discussed, but I have a question on our other departments, and maybe we can all answer this together. Do they have the same regulation as to not able to, or they have to bring it forth the board before termination? Are there anybody else other than the county administrator that would have to do that?
Elected officials, they have the ability by statute to run their office. So elected officials can do that. The county administrator would just be over county departments that are not then either elected or appointed. As for the duties of the other 2, the supervisor of assessment and county engineer, if this is approved, we would do language regarding what their job duties are with a job description, putting in place what the statute requirements are. And then oftentimes, not with a supervisor assessment, but the county engineer often has a contract, an employment contract. So that would be another step that we could possibly take. But this is kind of the starting point.
Thank you. Mr. Wahlberg?
So just to follow up, Ryan, I think where you're at, I need to be just a little bit more granular on this. So we're talking about, to your point, Ryan, so the county engineer has the ability to hire and fire his employees, correct?
Correct.
I'm asking a question.
Sure.
Tricia?
Is that correct?
I believe at this time, yes, he does, but possibly in consultation with the county administrator now based on our new ordinance. Prior to this new ordinance, it would revert back to the statute of what his duties are.
So assuming that's the same in the assessment's office, we have that ability today in an elected official's office. The county treasurer can run his office.
The elected officials can, yes.
Yep. So with this new language, we really kind of, in my mind, handicap our administrator. If we're hiring an administrator that we put our trust and faith in, they would not have that ability to do that without, I'm assuming if they were going to do anything, they would be in conversation with the county board chairman. Now, I know that's really not a good word to assume that, but I'm just trying to think through this out loud here. Reading through this, I just feel like I need more substance behind this to really understand. We're going to have a new administrator. I don't want to handicap our new administrator. I don't want to micromanage a new administrator. That's what I'm getting at.
And maybe Sherry or Ryan would want to talk about it more, but I think the point of the conversation amongst the group that met was that they didn't want to necessarily handicap that person. They were allowing that person to suspend with reasonable notice to the board, but ultimately when someone was going to be let go of employment, the board would take action. And again, that's not, that was a suggestion of that group of people. It's not something that the county board as a whole needs to approve. I guess this is a starting off point if you guys want to work on that language and give the county administrator some more leeway in that regard. But I think there was just some concerns based on the group of people that were there as to that firing ability. And I don't know if Ms. Gieske or Mr. Curry want to speak to that.
I'll let Sherry then round you.
Well, I think it's late and I'm tired, but I think we're digging a little further than we need to do on this. And I think the fact of the matter is that all this is really saying is there needs to be a notice to the county board if a termination is going to occur. But the other thing that we're trying to put in here is that there has to be a progressive discipline action. It can't be, there can't be arbitrary, this is it. There needs to be progressive discipline. And that's what this is also part.
I'm sure I would disagree with that. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think when we talked, it wasn't that. I'm starting to kind of remember the conversation basis was the position it puts the county in if something were likely to happen. So a notification and a step or a check and balance, just so that we understand it, not to handicap an administrator, to give that administrator that power. We would support our administrator because that's what we have to do, but there needs to be a step process in place, just like any place should, any department should. Go ahead, Sherry.
One last thing, and I think another key issue here is, however, prior to suspending any employee, the county administrator will make reasonable efforts to notify the county board chair of the personnel issue leading to the suspension, which makes sense. It sort of gets right into that progressive discipline aspect there.
Chair Bertelt.
I object to this completely. I've been here and for 4 years. I know the facts of what has happened over the past year or so. I know where this is headed. We are tying our new up. I don't like it, where it's going. I think it stinks. And if any of you want to differ, please voice their opinion now, because this thing stinks.
Mr. Riley?
Yeah, I kind of understand where Sherry's coming from on that. I guess at this point, my point is this. How does this compare to and I'm not saying we have to be exactly like everybody else. Let's look at and I'd like to have time to look at this before this is forwarded on to see what other administrators, county administrators are. Is this an issue in their contracts? Is this an issue that, is this normal, I guess is my question. Is this a common change to make of something that we've had in place for, well, I've only been here 2 years, but apparently it's been in place for a lot longer than that. And I do have to agree that I think this too is coming from a specific incident that I don't know that we want to get into it in open session, but I've got my reservations on this as well. And that's only because, of course, we're going to get ready to hire a new one here pretty soon. And I'm not so sure that saddling them with this is a smart idea, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Could I ask a question? Is the issue regarding the county highway engineer and the supervisor of assessment who are appointed by this board and subject to statutory requirements? And I can say for other counties, it is not unusual for those to be reporting directly to the board because you hire them or appoint them. Or is the issue regarding taking away the power from the county administrator to terminate somebody? Or both? Maybe it's both. I was just curious if there was just kind of separating those two issues.
For me, just to answer the question, it's the latter. And I mean, to look at it from a financial aspect, which is a lot of times where my head's at, I just feel like there may be a situation where we all agree unanimously on whatever the matter is, right? And now all of a sudden you're paying an individual to do a position and now you're going to say, well, you need to wait till next month to see what the county board thinks of it. That's ridiculous.
Sure.
Can we go back? I think if we went and just took it a sentence at a time, I don't think this is hamstringing the county administrator because it says shall in compliance with the county personnel policy, select employee supervisor or suspend any personnel positions and or employees under the jurisdiction of the board, except those positions by statute and appointed by the board. Okay, well, that's just common practice. You just have to have some rules and you have to follow. The issue is it's saying you've got to follow the personnel policies. But prior to suspending any employee, the county administrator will make reasonable efforts to notify the board chair. There's a notification, and so then it goes on. And so the county administration shall be subject to board approval. You notify and it's just an approval. So maybe what's causing people problems is the discharge of any employee by administrator shall be subject to county board approval. I'm hard pressed to think if I'm going to go to Tom's point, we're paying, and I think maybe Sherry too, we're paying somebody to do a job, then we should clearly listen to what their recommendation is. Really, we're only a policy-making entity. We are not an operations outfit here. So I don't know, maybe if we just take that last sentence out, it would not be, or would be a bit more palatable.
Sherry Bartelt.
Well, there's a lot of people sitting on this board that haven't been through some of this stuff before, or what has happened over the past year or so. And I feel that this is absolutely putting too much control into the county chairman. And on top of that, I feel that sometimes rules and regulations have been made, they have been followed, and certain people didn't like that they were followed and have come back in over and over and over again to overturn those, even though the administrator was probably correct. So I will repeat, it stinks.
Any other questions or comments?
What I can do prior to the board meeting is I'll give you, based on those comments, like a choice A and a choice B, with some of that taking into consideration what you recommended as a whole tonight, and provide that for the county board meeting as a whole, if that's appropriate.
Sherry?
And just for clarification, this is the ordinance. This is not the contract, correct?
Correct. No, the contract goes into much more detail
Right,
regarding
exactly.
employment purposes. This is just the ordinance.
This is the ordinance.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Sherry.
I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna back up what Rodney said. I really think we should look at what other counties have done in this situation before we go and change any type of ordinance and or whatever, because I'm gonna repeat again. There are certain things that have happened and certain people didn't like it. And so now they want something changed to be more kosher to their way of thinking, and I don't like it. I don't think it's fair to the new administrator. And I repeat again, I think you're putting too much power into the county board chairman.
Any other questions or comments? Hey, go ahead, Ray.
This current section was only added with this extra wording. I'm not sure. Sherry was on here with me. It was four years ago or something.
It was adopted in May of 2020.
2 years ago. So that's when and so we did compare it. It was compared to other ones, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
Other local counties and stuff. So yeah, I'm not sure why we're going back through it at this time here. So that the county administrator, we had already given them most of this power, and it seems like we're actually taking some away from them, a duty, instead of really giving them extra duty.
Well, question was raised as to the legality of the board being able to appoint someone to supervise somebody that was by statute to report to the board. And I don't think that we caught that necessarily when we drafted this first ordinance. And since that time, and I'm not going to say it's a settled legal issue, but it's been questioned as to whether the legality, again, of being able to, those two positions that are currently set by statute that you appoint, those are definitely different legally than, say, the building department director or the planning department. There's no statute that defines their job duties or their appointment by the board.
So the recommendation from the state attorney, or an offering, I should say, would be to draft two different languages that, in consideration to the comments made tonight, to review at the county board. And I don't believe we need a motion for that. We can move forward. Any questions or comments in regards to that? Sherry?
I guess my only question is, do you think we should, would it be possible to do it at finance week, have these, Trish?
Sure.
Okay.
Like that? All right, we'll move the options to finance so that we can mull it over, and then approach it again at the county board meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Tricia, for all of that. Item 9.12, I need a motion to approve ordinance 22-27, amending section 2-62 meetings of the Boone County Code of Ordinances. Motion made by Brent Mueller. Seconded by Sherry Gieske.
And I can discuss this one as well.
Thank
so
you.
Again, this was a discussion amongst board members about the setting of the agenda and then how it was not placed in the code. So the proposal, and I have a caveat here too, is that the agenda is set by the Boone County Chair in consultation with the county administrator. Prior to the meeting, the board members may submit a request to the board chair to add an item to the agenda, but it remains the board chairman's discretion. And that is like very standard board procedure. In some cases, so if it is adopted as it's written now, the procedure to get an item on the agenda that the chairman does not want or doesn't then add to the agenda is to make a motion at the time that the approval of the agenda, and it would have to be approved by the majority of the board to be placed on the agenda. That's the Robert's Rules of Procedure, which is what we default to if there's no provision within the code. The other option that you can do, and we could maybe put this on next week as well if you'd like, is some boards say that if 3 board members want a topic on the board agenda, then it gets placed on the board agenda. So it avoids amending the agenda at the board meeting and voting on it there. So I don't know if that's another option that the board would like to maybe consider for this portion, or any other comments. But I just wanted to say that up front, that there is probably another option that the board could at least consider.
Discussion? Right?
How does this, like, doesn't the, basically the agenda have to be publicly posted or something 24 hours before? 48 hours before that? How does that work with this?
So you can add an item to the agenda. Anything can be discussed at a meeting. It just cannot be voted on. So if you amend the agenda, you can add an item. And that's why maybe the board might want to consider if 3 members want an item on there, it could be placed on before it needs to be published, so that an item could actually be voted on if that was something to be voted on.
Sherry?
But if we're going to do something like that, I think we need to have some time restrictions on it, don't we? Or you know.
Right. I mean, I think that, again, it probably would have to be prior to the 48 hours so that it gets posted.
Right.
And have time, internally you could have a procedure that, the county administration has to have it by X amount of time so that, they have the ability to put it on before it needs to get published. Because I think it's, Tuesday right now by 5. We don't want it to be coming in, I think, at probably 4:50 or something. I'm assuming Dan would not appreciate that.
Hey, Larson?
Should that time frame be mentioned in this
we certainly can. If the board desires some language, like I said, having 3 or 4 people, go want an agenda item on there, I can certainly do that.
I'm not sure if it's necessary. I just thought, maybe, if somebody wants something that has to be voted on an agenda, I don't know, it should be actually written in here that they need to need to do it for at least 48 hours before so it can be published, Maybe it doesn't need to be on there. I don't know.
Any other questions or comments in regards? Tom?
I'm sorry to know it's late. We've all been here. I'm still trying to understand this. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here, Trish? I mean, are we saying the same thing, or is there more? I guess I like the detail. I don't have any problem with the way this is written, I guess, but your point about 3 board members and, well, if I'm prior to the agenda, couldn't I propose something for the agenda if I'm prior to that 48 hours or?
Well, it is very common practice, and this is what we operate on. That's not written in here, is that the chairman sets the agenda. Now, if someone comes to the concern was, how do I get something on the agenda? And so that's why there was the request for some more detail. And so then if there has to be some sort of procedure that if the chairman doesn't want to put it on the agenda, how do you then get it on the agenda? I guess, if that helps answer that.
That makes sense. Sure.
And hopefully the chairman, and we're just trying to cover our bases. Hopefully if someone wants something on the agenda, the chairman, would allow that on there, but we don't know, what the issue is or what the personalities are. So, everyone, I guess, just needs to know the process of getting something on the agenda. And that seems to have been, a mystery or questioned by some board members recently. Like in the last, I'm not saying this particular board, but I would say over the last couple of years, we've had questions of how do I get something on the agenda? Who has the right to put something on the agenda, et cetera.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Sherry Bartelt, we'll start with you, then go to.
I'm not going to be here because I'm not running again, but I do think that if the chairman doesn't want something on there, if they could get 3 people together and say, okay, I want this on there and I want to discuss it, I think it should be put in there.
Thank you. Rodney Riley?
I just was maybe just, Trish, just give us some options, like you had discussed before,
Okay.
I think that'll work the best, because I know exactly how. I mean, if you take an example, my resolution last year, I brought it before the chairman. It was not an issue. It was well before the 48 hours to have it posted on the agenda. That's just personally, that's just how I did it last month, and it was a pretty seamless process. But I understand where Sherry's coming from. If it was something that perhaps a board chairman would not want to entertain, then I would like to have a fallback option to try to get it on the agenda. So that's yeah.
Freddie De La Trinidad?
Oh, no, they answered what I wanted to ask, so.
Just gonna ask it again, particularly. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think we have a direction that we want to go. Provided options. Everybody, I guess I don't have to vote on that or a recommendation of it. So all those in favor to move the options to the, do we want to approach this at the finance as well? Right, okay. Move this to the finance so that we can discuss options to move to the board meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 9.13 raffles, we have nothing that I have signed. Intergovernmental reports of updates, we have nothing. Move down to section 11, correspondence.
I do have something.
Yeah.
So section 11, we included an email that we received from William Charles. William Charles operates a quarry. It's actually right on the boundary of Boone and Winnebago County on Highway 20 or East State Street, just near, it would be west of Shaw Road and then east of Interstate 90. And so we received notice from William Charles that they have resumed work at their quarry and that they will start blasting every 3 to 4 weeks till the end of December during the quarry's normal operating hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then they in the number here, or in the email, there's a phone number. If you have questions or concerns, please contact the company at 15654-4721. And so we just wanted to put this on here. We received this last week. We wanted to put this on the board, just radar tonight. And what we're planning on doing if we don't hear any, I guess just getting consensus, we'll put this on the website just as an announcement for folks to see. And then, I mean, if it's up to, we could do a notice if that's something that we'd want to do for adjacent property owners. We weren't planning on it, but it is certainly an option if we wanted to. And so I just wanted to bring this to the board's attention and get it out there. I know it's common, and I know Drew and maybe Izzy would be able to comment in more detail, but when they blast at these quarries, it's not uncommon to have residents call 911. People are, so it's we appreciate the notice, and it's good to let dispatch know, let the residents know, so that everyone's not surprised when it happens.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody add anything to that or any questions or concerns? All right, thank you. UCCI advocacy groups?
I don't have an update tonight, sorry.
I'm really bummed.
I know.
Board member comments. Sherry?
Okay. So, 2 weeks ago on a Saturday, I went to the rodeo. I looked at all my stuff there and I could see that the shark outfit had been there.
Sherry, can you pull the mic a little closer to you? I know you got a cold.
2 weeks ago, I went to the rodeo. We were all invited. Everybody on the board was invited to go. So I went. I had been checking my emails from the county, and of course, pictures are there of all their drone activity Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I was there and very well respected, very well everything. I watched everything that happened, including failing. If you are there and you watch it, you really don't understand. So I watched it, and I'm going to say this, at least 60 to 65% of the time, they don't even get a hold of the animal's tail. And sometimes when they do get a hold of the steer, it does not go down. Now, At the one I was at on that Saturday, Hernando had at least 6 inches or more of sand for those animals to fall in. So when those animals went down, even though they went down, Ray, do you think it's funny?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Because it doesn't matter that there's 6 inches of sand. The animals are still getting hurt. Can I wrap a rope around your arm and go do the same thing to you?
Let's keep in order. Go ahead, Sheriff, finish your comments, and then Ray, you can address concerns.
So anyway, when the animal goes down, it hits the sand and you can see the sand go away. It's a softer landing. My thought on going to that was if with the rodeos, that maybe a requirement for them should be at least 6 inches of sand in all of the places that do the rodeos. It was my observation. I watched everything that went on that day, including they had women there riding horses, very beautiful. Outfits were beautiful. Everything was very nice. Everybody was courteous. Nobody was out of hand. During that time, though, Hernando said our sheriff's department was called. There's supposedly people over there protesting, and there was nobody there. That was a waste of our county's time sending our sheriff's department there to check it out. In talking to different people in different departments at this county who have been harassed by these people constantly calling, sending text messages, and actually some of our emails, that some of these departments have to take anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes a day because we have to read every email that they get. We have to answer every call and voice message that comes in. So it has taken up a lot of time with this county because of this. Also, in talking to the head of one of our departments, they not only get calls, but a person or two people do come in and they want them to do something. So at one of them, this past weekend, they got a telephone call. Well, before that weekend, and a person was said, if you have an issue with this rodeo, please call the non-emergency number. It was repeated over and over again. The person did not do it. They called the 911 number. They said that an animal was there and that one of its horns was dangling and they needed somebody out there. The person got a call. They said, okay. They sent them a video. Okay. They said, we can't really tell. They sent them a five-minute video. Still couldn't tell. So 2 county mounties and this person went out there to this rodeo. They looked at all the steers that were there. No such thing. Every steer was fine. As you know, while I was at that rodeo, I decided, wow, there's 4 drones in the air here. Where are they? Well, we watched. So I saw where they went down. We got in the truck. We went over there. I took pictures of them. I went around, came back up. I took pictures of their license plates. I cannot run those because I do not have a complaint on them. That being said, they took pictures of me and they put it all over their shark thing. Obviously, I have been getting hit pretty hard. And you know what? I don't care. Because they not only did 1 hit item on me, they did 2. And in both of those, they lied. I know for a fact that when they have sat there, one of them walked across this and everybody in the room heard it. That person told them, if you don't like it, go back to where you came from, which is a racist remark. That being said, I think somebody has to stand up for some of the crap that's going on in this county caused by these people. Number 1, and the most important thing is this. This county does not control what goes on in this state. It is state law that they have a right to do tailing. What right do we have to tell these people they can't do that? What are our options? There really are very few, unless this county wants to get sued. So My attitude is, hey, if you don't like tailing, contact the state of Illinois. But please don't waste our deputies' time and everybody else's time to go out to these, considering the number of accidents that have been happening in this county. By making these telephone calls and insisting somebody go out there when there is nothing there, and they know that to begin with. What happens if we have our deputies over there looking for a steer with a hurt horn, and we have an accident and the deputies are tied up over there? That could be a life or death situation, but hey, I need you out there on a lie. A couple weeks before that, they were called out on another one. Said the animal was hurt and everything else. This person was there on the property. While this person was on that property, the deputies were called by the rodeo people. At that time, the 2 deputies came out. They said, okay, we'll go back, we'll look at the steers. Fine. They went back there, and the lady that was there at that time insisted on going back there with the 2 deputies. They said, no, it is not your responsibility. They went back, they looked at those steers, found nothing. She got a little bit irritated, and the deputies asked her to leave, not the Hispanic people. And neither did they ask the deputies to leave, which was a lie when they stood here about 3 weeks ago and told us that. They lied to us. So if they lie about me, they lied about that, how much other is they lying about? And if you really want to look at the shark films, please go to the bottom and look at everything wrote on the bottom. One of the first things it says at the bottom of that is, please donate. Please donate. And then it tells you where you can donate to keep these shark people going. And if you donate, if you buy something on Amazon, it goes to the Sunshine Group, which I didn't know. I am now called Amazon and said, I no longer want to be part of it. Because 85% of the Sunshine Group goes to the shark people. I'm looking at it this way. If they can't take me taking a picture of them, there's a problem. It's called they're being a hypocrite. If they want to be in the air and fly around and look at other people, fine. But when something happens to them, why are they so mad and want to attack me? They've been attacking other people in this county for quite a while. Next thing I'm going to say is the original person who started this had a business in her house since 7/12 of 2016. And during that time, this lady did not have a permit. She never got her permit until she started raising heck about the Hispanic people doing a rodeo. And she got her permit to do that on 4/6/22. So we have Hispanic people here in this county who have abided by the rules and regulations and had their proper permits. And the lady that has been causing all the trouble did not have a permit for 6 years to do her own business. I think that stinks. That's all I have to say.
Any other comments? Right?
No.
Freddie De La Trinidad.
Just going to add a little bit to that. I did a little research on the Channel Shark or whatever website. They do go after hunting, fishing, white rodeos, bull riding, bull roping. The problem I have with all this is when they come here to Boone County, they're only going after the Mexican rodeos when we have all that stuff in Boone County. So that is my issue with that. Because what's animal abuse? What isn't animal abuse? Because in their channel, they say everything's animal abuse. I mean, they go after the NRA for hunting deer and, all kinds of stuff. So why just the Mexican rodeos? That is my whole thing with that. And that's why they're getting called out for racism. So.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Rod.
I probably should be quiet, but in my hometown, there's a place called Pike County Trailblazers, and it's been in operation since before I was born. And when I mentioned down there about tailing, never heard of it. And I'm not saying it's not an ethnic issue. It may very well be. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but it doesn't go on in every single rodeo is all I'm saying. So I don't know. There's two sides to all the stories, and I'm sure that we're only beginning to hear parts and bits and pieces of it.
Sure.
We did an ordinance this summer. We did the best we could with the information that we had. It made some people happy. It still didn't make some other people happy. I was a big proponent of having to wait and see how things go. So now we've waited. We've seen some issues. Maybe we need to address some things and move forward with it. But
Brett, and then I'll come back to you, Sherry.
A comment to add to Sherry. 35 to 40% of those animals did get caught with their tail and thrown to the ground. Anytime that if I was caught doing that on my farm through the farm program, which is farmers assuring reasonable management practices, I would lose my milk contract with my co-op. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying if I was caught doing it, I would have repercussions of what would happen.
Sherry?
When I was growing up, I was on my aunt and uncle's farm from May until September. And one of the funnest things we used to do is go out there and grab a hold of a calf or a steer or whatever and hang onto their tail. And I know we've all done that. It was all in fun. No, we never really hurt them or anything. But yeah, it was in fun. But what I'm going to say is this. I have watched stuff on TV. I've watched videos. And I went to rodeos when I was younger. And I went to this one because I wanted to see. And what I saw that day, Brent, was at least up to 65% of the time, those animals, they didn't reach the tail. And if they did, they didn't bring them down. And when they did bring them down, they were in almost 6 inches of sand. You can say, yeah, they're still going down. But because of that sand, it was a softer landing. And you have to say this, and I think I've told you that before. When I grew up, everything was in a stanchion. You milked the cow, you pulled it off, you poured it in a 5-gallon bucket, and you carried it up and you dumped it. And at that time, sometimes the cow would go potty or shit or whatever you want to say. And they'd back out of that stanchion and slip in that and they'd break their leg. Just that easy. You know that's truthful too. They can be out in your yard and slip and fall and break a leg. So that being said, it doesn't matter what we do. A lot of things, an animal's going to fall, they're going to get hurt. Someone else told me about an animal that was a horse. Oh, I guess I better stop because Ray and Ryan Curry cannot control themselves.
I mean, Sherry, let's just look at the basis of your argument. It's all I'm saying that your defense to someone grabbing an animal by its tail and taking it to the ground is of what, 1,000 pounds, 1,100 pounds?
1,200 pounds.
1,200 pounds is 6 inches of sand. You cannot honestly think that that is a feasible excuse to a padding for a 1,200 pound animal. It is not. And your defense then is the ratio of how many times someone catches a cow by the tail and rears it to the ground as a sport. I'm all about sports. I hunt. I ethically hunt. But you have to kind of understand the opposition. And you also mentioned that the cops were called for protesters that weren't there. I'm guessing, just on a whim, that it was the rodeo holders that were calling the cops on the drone people as protesters. I'm not sure. I don't know the drone people. I'm not on their side. I'm not on anybody's side. I'm just saying, like, you kind of have to see the argument on both sides. I appreciate tradition more than probably than a lot of people. And the tradition of the Hispanic culture that do this. I just think that we're in a time now that things are adapting to ways that we kind of have to curtail life to appreciate things in a different way. So some of these old traditions, as much as we like them, have evolved into something different in today's views. So that being said, I see both sides of an argument. I see your side of the argument because, you know, this is a tradition. I see Ray's side and Brent's side of the argument is it's still not right.
I'm going to take the chairman's opportunity to call this meeting to adjourn. While I certainly appreciate everyone's opinions, it is 3.5 hours into a meeting, way past when I'd like to have a glass of wine and hit the sack. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn this meeting, please.
So moved.
Motion made by Rodney Riley, seconded by Brent Mueller. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.